Stage number 4, and another summit finish awaits. This was earlier at the start town of Baracaldo. Contador, Rodriguez, Valverde leading them off the line to start today's 160-kilometer stage. And Valverde starts as the leader. Benyat and Chosti in second, but then take note of the names behind him. Rodriguez, Froome, and Contador rounding out the top 5, all within half a minute of the top of the leaderboard.
Indeed, it is longer today at the finish. It's about 100 miles in length, 160.6 kilometers. Category 1 climb, they've already been over the Orduña, and all the effort of the race will come on the final. It's not as steep. 9% at the bottom, leveling out at the top. I don't think it's going to be as selective for the overall contenders. We may have a slightly larger group contesting the finish.
It is a hot, windy day at the top of the final climb where stage number 4 will end. They're on the road, and we'll pick up the live racing when we come back here on Universal Sports. It's about due south. Final day in Spain's Basque Country, starting in the town of Baracaldo, hosting a Vuelta stage start for the first time in its history.
Pretty much straight south, 100 degrees once again for the guys. They've been over the first Category 1 climb, the Orduña, and still making it up to the ski area toward the finish. Once again, it's not as steep at the top, so look for guys to attack at the very bottom where it's 9%, and then guys that are struggling to try and catch back on and hold on to the wheel to sprint for the stage at the top.
And we are live with a 5-man breakaway, and they have a lead of just about 12 minutes right now over the field. And just around 60 kilometers left to go on this wide open stage. They are baking out there. The temperature right around 100 degrees back here at the head of the main field. Movistar once again setting the tempo, this time riding for Alejandro Valverde instead of Jonathan Castroviejo, who had worn the red jersey for stages 2 and 3. Now the red jersey passes over to his teammate Valverde, so Movistar continues to ride at the front.
Well, it's a very interesting time of the bike race, Steve, because of that breakaway, 5 men up the road with about 12 minutes at about 60 kilometers to go. Movistar's got a lot of work to do at this point. Luis Angel Mate, the man on the front there, number 67, just at the very front at the moment, actually right in the middle. He is the leader on the road. He comes in only 3:36 down. They have a 20 advantage. That's a big deal.
He's the virtual race leader right now here at the Vuelta. This is the largest lead any breakaway has gotten in the first few days, and now they're showing 66 kilometers officially remaining, and it is Luis Angel Mate in this group, along with the German Tony Martin, coming off the silver medal in the time trial at the London Olympic Games. 1-year-old from Kazakhstan, and our second Spaniard, the 30-year-old Jesus Rosendo. So 2 Spaniards, a German, Aussie, and a Kazakh rider making up the 5-man move today. So about Movistar and their intentions with this breakaway, how do you think that this might unfold here? Because we are getting to that point in the stage with 5 guys, pretty healthy lead, still early in the race. What might Movistar do? Because they've been doing a lot of work these last couple of days at the front of the field.
I'm surprised that they have a 12-minute deficit at this point at the front of the peloton behind those 5 guys. That's a lot of time, and they do not want to just let the red jersey slip. So, you know, they're either going to have to start riding very concertedly, very quickly here, or else the group of 5 is going to ride off and we're going to have a new race leader.
How much work do they want to be doing, though? I mean, they've now had 2 different leaders. They've been the team that's been responsible for setting the pace these first few days out on the open road. It's a long way to go in this Vuelta, a lot of hard stages still to come, and you can only burn so much energy so soon.
I feel like the man number 67 on the back, that's Mate, the Cofidis rider, who's the guy that's best placed in this group of 5. I feel like in Movistar's shoes, if Valverde was feeling good for the long haul, I wouldn't. If he's not feeling good about winning the overall, then you want to hold the jersey as long as you can because you figure you may never get it back. And so that's kind of the balance point for me for a team. And if Valverde actually thinks he has the legs to contend with Contador and the guys for the full 3 weeks, well, maybe they're just going to let it go today.
Guys eating, in the race right now. That's the Rabobank team on the right to the orange and blue, Movistar on the left in the blue and the green. And as far as the new race leader, Alejandro Valverde, he came into the Vuelta not as the team leader. He was here to support J.J. Cobo, the defending Vuelta champion from last year, but Cobo's preparations were compromised by an infected wisdom tooth. He's already lost some time, so he doesn't really look to be a big factor in this race. So now you think about Valverde, who's had a pretty heavy race schedule to this point in the season. Does he consider himself now a potential candidate for the win, for the podium? How much does getting the red jersey this soon motivate him, perhaps?
Yeah, and when you look at what this field is doing, they certainly do not look like they are interested in catching that breakaway group. There's always this tipping point, and if the group off the front is close enough that the field says, well, you know what, it's not going to cost us too much energy to catch them, then they will go for it. But when it's 12 minutes and it's inside of 60 kilometers, that's a huge amount of effort that the field is going to have to expend to bring those 5 guys back.
The Vuelta a Espana on Universal Sports, presented by GoPro. And the peloton just rolling through the first of 2 intermediate sprint points in the town of Haro. And they are 13 minutes and 10 seconds behind the 5-man breakaway. So
It's
looking more and more likely that breakaway could really stay away.
Yeah, I don't see the breakaway coming back at this point. I mean, it's just not that far to the finish. They're inside of 30 miles. They have a gigantic lead. And I think we also have a very strong likelihood that there's going to be a new man as an overall race leader after today as well, and that will be Mate.
Now, Movistar just has not shown to really hit the accelerator, bring that breakaway back. And no other teams coming forward to help out. And at this point, you start to think, well, is it even worth it? Because you get to that moment where the math starts to work in the favor of the breakaway.
Yep, it's plain and simple. And nobody has come up to pitch into the efforts of Movistar. 13 minutes, 10 seconds. It is gigantic. And so now we have another man who is in the prime position to put on the race leader's jersey, Luis Angel Mate, up the road. And he's not a long-term threat, but we can still have a battle back here in the peloton, assuming the breakaway does stay away, which would actually take a miracle for it not to at this point. There's still going to be guys back here that may think they can get some time when they hit the final climb.
Coco, explain how this happens. What was going on earlier that allowed the breakaway to get this much time without Movistar or another team picking up the pace to start keeping it in check, to not let that time swell the way it has?
Well, the way I look at it is because the breakaway is comprised of guys who are not long-term threats for the general classification, the biggest issue here is Team Movistar. They're going to lose the red jersey. It's not going to impact the overall race at the end of the next 2.5 weeks. So it's just a question of how much work Movistar wanted to do, which gives Valverde a lot of attention and gives good press. And it looks like they're going to lose it. But Rodriguez isn't concerned about Mate, and neither is Froome, and neither is Contador. They don't have the red jersey going into the day, so they're no worse off if Mate's in the jersey tomorrow.
And Movistar has had the red jersey since day one. They won the team time trial. They were the final team on course. They won it by 10 seconds. Jonathan Castroviejo led them across the line in Pamplona, so he was the first overall race leader. Wore the red jersey for 2 days. Gave it over to his teammate Alejandro Valverde yesterday when Valverde just beat Rodriguez for the stage win. And now Valverde wears it for the first day today, but it may be one and done for the Spanish rider, judging by the way things are going.
And one and done is never a good thing, whether you're talking music or cycling. You want to make sure that you get more than one hit. And Valverde coming into the day, he said, hey, he was still going to try and win. He said yesterday was a great day for us, meaning the team, and everything now will be a bonus, but he didn't intend to stop trying and winning. Well,
Valverde, the winner of the Vuelta back in 2009. Coming from a cycling family, his father Juan was an amateur bike racer, and he gave his son Alejandro his first bike when he was 6 years old. And his brother Juan Francisco was also an amateur road racer, so both his father and brother were out battling it out on the road. That's what got Alejandro Valverde into the sport. And rumor has it that he was one of the top young riders in Spain, especially in his early teen years. Some reports have him winning as many as 50 consecutive races between the ages of 11 and 13. Is it all true? Who knows? But those are some of the stories you hear out of Spain in Alejandro Valverde's early days racing a bike.
Well, certainly he showed he had promise at a young age, and there's no guarantee whatsoever that a rider that young that is that good will be good later on, because a lot happens between the ages of 13 and 20 and 30 and so on. But it's a teeny bit of an uphill.
All right, so here's our five-man breakaway. They are in the town of Santo Domingo de la Calzada. Two intermediate sprints they went through Haro earlier. So the second intermediate sprint coming at exactly 29.6K to go. And now look at this. We have, a crash!
Oh.
A huge crash! On the left-hand side of the road, just as Sky had put in an acceleration.
Massive pile up in the middle of the front of the group there, and look at all the Liquigas Cannondale
Saxo
men.
Bank has a couple of riders down as well.
Movistar is in there as well.
The
A
red
bunch
jersey.
of Movistar.
The red
There's
jersey.
Valverde.
Alejandro Valverde is back up, but he was involved in that crash. So two Saxo Bank riders, several Liquigas, the red jersey, Rabobank is there.
Well, as long as these guys are not injured, they should be able to get back together and make it back up to the peloton, the way the pace has been going.
Now Valverde looks like he's walking around all right. He's just tending to his bike. He's now getting back on, and now this is the front of the group. Ian Stannard in the white jersey for Team Sky is setting the pace. Now Valverde will expect his teammates to come back and pace him back up into that group.
A little bit surprising to me to see Sky on the front right now, kind of drilling it a bit with a slight crosswind out of their right, our left here, because there really is no major sort of topography in the race that's breaking things up, and these guys are kind of going for it right now. You can see Froome in the white glasses, about 8 riders from the front.
And Joaquim Rodriguez is right behind him in a white jersey for Katusha. So Sky coming to the front for the first time and really starting to ride. This is the first time any team other than Movistar has been at the front. And this is where the crash occurred.
Oh, just horrible crash there.
And it was so far near the front. I mean, typically you don't see crashes that occur that close to the front of the field, and that's why guys stay up front.
I think there's a common misconception, and you're right, Steve. You don't usually see crashes that far toward the front of the field. I actually think the safest place in the field is the very last guy or the very first guy. Anywhere in the middle there, especially toward the front, sometimes guys are fighting for a position. There's Rodriguez, or excuse me, Valverde. He's got a teammate with him. But they're going to have a long chase right now, and Sky is putting the hammer down a little bit in the front of the field. There may be some harsh words once these guys make it back up there, and I do think they will.
Quintana is the rider, number 7 for Movistar, that's pacing Alejandro Valverde back towards the front, but Sky not letting up here.
No, they are not. Fletcher coming through, Stannard in the white jersey. It is definitely on right now at the front here. Katusha also throwing in, so they have gotten rid of Valverde. They know it. And they're taking advantage of it. This is pretty rare on an innocuous day to see the race leader crash and have his two main competitors' teams hit the front and start going like that.
Steph Clement is the rider for Rabobank in the orange and blue, right behind Valverde.
And Quintana, he's a small Colombian climber. He's not the man to have with Valverde here on this sort of false flat, chasing back up. Here it looks like a couple more of the teammates of Valverde coming back.
It doesn't look like they've got that much time on Valverde. He's still going to have to use some energy to chase, but well, now we've got a split here.
Yeah, so look at these echelons. There are two echelons behind the field. At the front of the field up there on the left, you can see Sky driving it. Now a third echelon breaking out. So Sky is definitely taking advantage of this crosswind out of the right. They are putting the hammer down and putting the field in the gutter. And once the elastic snaps in the gutter, then guys move to the right. They make room so their friends can get a draft and help them chase.
You just don't often see another team attacking when the leader of the race crashes like that.
No, the only thing I can think is that they were just about to put the hammer down anyway and take advantage of this crosswind. And they said, you know what? So it goes. There was a crash, but we were already going to do this, and sorry, Alejandro.
It seemed like they had just started to attack when the crash occurred.
It really did seem like they were just starting to accelerate. I agree with you there. And it is definitely full on up here at the front.
It's the first big crash we've seen at this year's Vuelta. We saw a couple of other crashes in the team time trial, but out on the open road, nothing these last few days.
Now notice on the far right of the road, the white jersey, red shorts, that's Rodriguez, and he's right behind Chris Froome, and they've got both of their teams on the front going. Now this is actually pretty interesting to see. Typically when there's a crosswind like this, you will not let the officials will not let guys sit out there on the cars. But it's probably only by virtue of the fact that those guys had the crash that the officials are looking the other way a little bit.
So Froome is up there near the front, as we have several different groups here on the road. Valverde is off the back here in the red jersey. We saw a couple of Saxo Bank riders go down in the crash. We haven't seen where Alberto Contador is.
And notice how chaotic this is. That front group at the top of your picture, notice the guys on the far left that are back in the gutter, kind of single file. Those are the guys that are struggling, and they're slowly getting popped out the back one at a time because they're not getting draft. Only the guys further up are getting a draft. But when they turn to the right here, it's going to change the weather and the wind direction. It's going to allow everybody to get right back in there. They'll start to close down the gap again.
Joaquim Rodriguez also in the front group, just behind Chris Froome. So among the top names, you have Froome and Rodriguez at the very front. Alejandro Valverde, the race leader, at the back, still trying to chase and still waiting to find out exactly where Alberto Contador is.
Oh, that's just a giant traffic circle, so it is actually not going to change the fact that they still have a crosswind. Crosswinds are the most sketchy time of bike racing.
I mean, just look at the trees and see how it's swirling out there, too.
Absolutely chaotic when you have a crosswind.
All right, so Valverde has 3 teammates with him.
3, but only 3. It's still, you know, he needs his entire team. But remember, he got up, and some of his teammates were still on the ground behind. So he may not actually have any more teammates in front of him. This may be all he has to help him get back into this race. Looks like one more Movistar rider just catching from behind.
Well, now it looks like Valverde has lost over a minute here.
So things are going from bad to worse for Alejandro Valverde and Movistar. First, the breakaway of 5 had 13 minutes, and it looked like Luis Angel Mate would ride into the overall lead. Now, Valverde is losing big time to his GC competitors.
And that's the big thing. He was looking at one point like he was going to let the red jersey go, but it's one thing to let the lead go to Luis Angel Mate. It's another thing to lose time on other guys you're really going to be competing with long-term on the GC.
Yeah, it could actually end up being a catastrophic day for Valverde. And what we saw before this crash was a very sort of pedestrian day. I mean, the breakaway, they got lucky. They won the lottery, and they were riding off into the sunset for the stage win and the overall lead. One crash, everything changes.
This is back to Valverde. Again, over a minute behind and losing time considering the pace that's being set by Sky at the front of the group.
And you just look at the numbers. You got Valverde with 3, now 4 teammates rotating through. So that's 4 guys setting the pace versus well over 10 on the front. Sky and Katusha. And so when you just look at strength in numbers, there's a lot more strength up the road.
Yeah, at first, the gap wasn't all that big between the groups, but now with the pace we're seeing at the front, that's why Valverde is slowly losing time here. He's got a big challenge to try and get back up to this group that is now single file because Ian Stannard at the front and Team Sky, they are just on the throttle.
Yeah, and if this had not been a crosswind moment in the bike race when Valverde crashed, it would not have been that big a deal. The field would not have put the hammer down like that, but when there's a crosswind and guys see an opportunity to shred the field, it is really tough bike racing. It's some of the toughest in the business.
Five-man breakaway again. They've had a large lead all day long, and Luis Angel Mate in the red and white of Cofidis just pulling off the front. These guys have been out of sight for a long time, and for much of the stage, there was little interest in bringing them back. Movistar was riding at the front, but not at a very heavy pace. Just over 20K left to go. And now we're back to our three distinct groups that split up in the main field once we saw that crash occur that took down our overall race leader, Alejandro Valverde. He's at the bottom of the screen here with this third group. Has a few teammates with him.
So when this group here merges with the group right in front of them, which they're about to do, there's going to be this reshuffling. There's not going to be enough room for everybody to get a draft if they continue to hammer in this crosswind. So Valverde is going to have to be very careful that he moves up to the front with all his teammates and a bunch of these Liquigas guys in green on the right. You can see them all moving around, and they want to get right up to the front and make it happen. And notice that, one of the Sky riders giving Valverde a push there. Just say, hey man, get up there. We don't want to completely hose you here.
And it looks like Alberto Contador is here. He's just behind the Team Sky riders popping out there. So he's on the left-hand side of the road, which would be the right-hand side of your screen. So Contador, Rodriguez, and Froome are all here near the front of this first group in what is left of the main field. That's at the top of the screen. The bottom of the screen here, this other group contains Alejandro Valverde in the red jersey of the race leader. So it's under 50 seconds between these two groups, and it looks like the gap is coming down. And there's a few other riders caught in between here.
These guys struggling to make it back up to the lead group. Notice how different these two groups are. This front group, Sky all very much using the left lane and the left part of the left lane. They're not leaving room for riders behind. You get down here to the group with Valverde, which is just about to come into our picture, they're going to be all the way over on the right. Well, they were a moment ago, and they will probably continue to use more of the road because they want to encourage as many guys as possible to get the draft and then work pulling through to help them catch up.
Here's Valverde in the red jersey, just ahead of Christophe Lemavelle, number 96 for Garmin Sharp. Several Liquigas riders in the green. Valverde has three teammates ahead of him, but they are still chasing. Just over 40 seconds behind the Chris Froome, Joaquim Rodriguez, and Alberto Contador group.
And it really behooves this group, this last group on the road, to move as far over to the right as possible. Because when you create guys struggling in the crosswind in the gutter because you're over on the left, then they're not inclined to help chase. Use the whole road, encourage as many guys as you can to pull. This is not the time to play games trying to spit a few guys out the back. It's trying to catch back up to the race up the road.
This is the very front of the race right now. Our five-man breakaway. Mate in the red and white for Cofidis, riding at the very front. It's been a while since we've gotten a time check as to how far up the road they are from our two groups back here. Last time we saw it was still over 13 minutes, and now Sky has been riding to bring that time back, and we don't know how much they've reduced the deficit by, but so much has changed. What looked like a very harmless stage with no one from the main field really chasing to bring that breakaway back. All of a sudden a crash once Sky started to finally ride at the front of the main field, and now we have several different groups out on the road. We have the overall race leader chasing to get back up to this group that contains all of the main GC contenders. We have Sky at the front, Katusha right there, Contador Saxo Bank team.
Well, certainly the gap to the lead group of five cannot be 13 minutes plus anymore. 40 seconds now between Froome, Contador, Rodriguez, and the group behind containing Valverde.
Group is now really starting to ride. BMC, followed by Sky. Ian Stannard there in the white jersey. Chris Froome is near the front here. He's in the white glasses. Behind him, Alberto Contador in the yellow and blue. For Saxo Bank, the white jersey in the middle of the screen, that's Joaquim Rodriguez.
Rodriguez has to be thinking he has a massive opportunity right now. This is one of those days where he can put himself in the red jersey, and it is actually in play right now because the pace has gone up so high by this Sky-driven and BMC-driven group right now. That gap to the leaders may actually be reduced enough that Mate does not ride into the overall lead.
They're riding up to the Estación de Valdez-Caray, being used as a Vuelta stage finish for the 5th time, but the first time since 1991. They used it in 88, 89, then 90 and 91, so in a very small period of time. It's been a while since they've been back, and now with 15K to go, our 5 leaders are just 1.5 kilometers away from starting this climb, which will reach its steepest slope early on, right at the bottom of the hill. This is back to that first big group of the GC contenders. Chris Froome right in the middle of the screen with the white sunglasses. Contador 2 wheels behind, and then 2 wheels behind him, Joaquim Rodriguez. The man who is not here is the overall leader, Alejandro Valverde in the red jersey, still chasing about a half-minute back.
Philippe Gilbert putting in a massive turn on the front right now. He's been doing some big work here with his teammate Alessandro Ballan at the front of this group.
We'll see exactly how far back the Valverde group is now. And here they come. You see Valverde in the red jersey right in the middle of the screen now. He's got 3 teammates ahead of him.
Seen a lot of the Liquigas Cannondale men on the front. That tells me that most likely their general classification hope, Eros Kopecky, has also been spit out the back, and he's probably in this group. Kopecky came into the day sitting in 12th spot at 59 seconds. He was pleased with his ride yesterday, and he thought today's finish would suit him more. I don't think he ever would have expected, neither would any of these guys, that they'd be coming in chasing right now after a day like this.
So we have 5 leaders who still have several minutes on the first big group that has Froome, Contador, and Rodriguez. And then we have this second group that has the overall race leader, Alejandro Valverde, that's now actually losing time. They're 50 seconds back. So this is the first group of what was the main field that contains Froome, Contador, Rodriguez. 4 minutes back. We have 5 leaders on the stage who are already on the final climb. These are the leaders, and it's now starting to come apart. That's Bazayev from Kazakhstan, riding for Astana, coming off the back here. Luis Angel Mate has already dropped.
And he was the highest placed guy in the lead group of 5 at 3:36. So this is turning more and more into a day for a possible stage win, and that's it. Right on the front, Tony Martin, the German for Omega Pharma Quickstep. He is still drilling it there with Simon Clark, the Australian, coming around him.
Well, the red jersey is certainly up for grabs here today, with Alejandro Valverde still chasing that first big group from what was the main field earlier. And last check, he was 50 seconds back. And still a multitude of riders within a minute of the overall lead coming into the day. So now you have the red jersey chasing. A lot of different possibilities for a new leader at the end of stage 4.
All kinds of possibilities. This is the Valverde group, 1:07 down, so they've lost another 17 seconds to that group of leaders. This is looking very dire for Valverde at this point.
So this is the Froome, Contador, Rodriguez group. Valverde losing time as the leaders are already on the final climb leading to the summit finish. Alejandro Valverde in the red jersey is now on the final climb, still chasing. the other GC contenders as well as the leaders here. As we're now down to the final of 2 climbs at the end of stage number 4. This is a 13.5-kilometer climb averaging just over 5% with the maximum slope of 9% right at the bottom.
He's got the Colombian Nairo Quintana on the front doing the big pacemaking here, but these are desperate moments as they're passing guys from the group in front of them that have been dropped. But the guys that are not coming back are the overall contenders, and they're still over a minute up the road.
That's amazing. Valverde at first was over a minute behind the Froome, Contador, and Rodriguez group. Then he cut it in half. Now it's back to over a minute once again. So it's gone back and forth here, but Valverde desperately trying to once again take back that time. Here is that group that now features Robert Hayes-Sink there in the orange and blue for Rabobank, sitting second wheel. Behind him, you've got Contador in the yellow, black and blue of Saxo Bank. Chris Froome is also up there near the front for Sky. Joaquim Rodriguez is in a white jersey today for Katusha.
On the front for Argos Shimano, that's Cone de Court setting the tempo there, but that's inconsequential. What's really of consequence is Valverde's situation. It looks like he may be trying to go across on his own, but looking over, so maybe he still has some guys with him. Indeed, he does. Right there with him, Eros Capecchi, the Italian for Liquigas Cannondale, as we suspected, also missed the split.
Well, Valverde doesn't have any teammates, so he's trying to do this largely on his own. He's in the red right in the middle of the screen. So, boy, how things have changed. With about 40K to go, we had a 5-man breakaway that had a lead of over 13 minutes, and nobody in the main field was showing much interest in bringing them back. Luis Angel Mate, who was 3.5 minutes down on the GC, was in that front group of 5. It looked like he was going to be poised to move into the red jersey of overall leader. Then a crash happens, splits in the field occur, everything changes. Now Mate has been dropped on this final climb, and we still have the possibility that somebody else is going to be in the red jersey. We just don't know who at this point.
Well, one thing we haven't seen, 3.5 minutes from this peloton to the leaders of just Clark and Martin now, but we have not seen who else is in this group. We don't know if the man who came in second place overall for Movistar, Benyat Inchosti, is still sitting in this group with the favorites, if he will inherit the jersey when Valverde looks like he may lose it today.
Inchosti, the teammate of Valverde, sitting second at 18 seconds behind his teammate, who is still chasing. Valverde is near the top of the screen here in the red jersey.
Now, if Inchosti is not in that first group of favorites, then it goes to Rodriguez, Froome, Contador. Those are the next 3 guys in the general classification.
And think about this, though, because they are just separated by 5 seconds. Froome, Rodriguez, and Contador within 5 seconds of one another, and should everybody come back, there are still time bonuses at the line of 12, 8, and 4 seconds for the first 3. We saw those guys fighting it out for time bonuses yesterday. We could see the same thing again today, potentially.
We could, and I think because the climb gets shallower and shallower as it goes up in terms of the grade, I think it's going to be harder for one of those guys to get the time bonuses today. And we may see somebody else who sort of plays off of their hard work, pipping them at the line, and they still have to obviously catch Martin and Clark, who are off the front. Rodriguez now just really putting a lot into this, Valverde, as he knows this is do or die for him. This is not just losing the red jersey to some guy who doesn't matter. This is losing time to the general classification favorites.
That's the 10K banner for our 2 leaders, Tony Martin of Omega Pharma Quickstep, followed by Simon Clark of Orica Green Edge. They were part of that original 5-man breakaway that had over 13 minutes at one point. It's now down to just these 2 leaders. And this is back to the first group that is chasing, led by Team Sky. Chris Froome is sitting second position here in the white sunglasses.
Right behind one of his very good Colombian domestiques, that's Sergio Henao. Henao, one of the men made for the mountain days like this. And he knows this is important now. Valverde is getting rid of almost everybody else back there and still forging on ahead.
By making a big singular effort here to try and reduce that deficit. Not going to get any help from Raf Marca here, number 203 for Saxo Bank.
Yeah,
He's not going to drag him up to
not.
his teammate Contador. He's going to sit in. So just 17 seconds now. So, boy, Valverde has taken back a lot of time here.
Wow, that's a Herculean effort there by Valverde to close down that gap.
All right, so we have...
That looks like Igor Antone to me.
Does look like Antone with a Saxo Bank rider right behind him, marking the move.
Pretty hard to tell in these shady sections of the course.
And the Espana rider now also coming up. Remember, we still have Tony Martin and Simon Clark, the two leaders who just went inside of 10K to go to the finish. Now that is not Antone.
No, I think it actually may be Romain Sicard, but I'm still not able to tell in this shade.
Now Navarro, Velasco, and Zeitz, our three riders here, just going off the front of that Froome, Contador, and Rodriguez group.
So Navarro, you can see the second man there looking back. He'll be looking to see if Contador comes up, if he can help him out in any way. They are not only teammates, but extremely good friends.
Ivan Velasco is the rider for Euskaltel in the orange and black in that group, but they're just a few seconds ahead of this group that has Froome, Contador, and Rodriguez in the front four of this group here.
And remember, these guys have been over the steepest part of the climb already. It just gets more gradual as it goes on. So there won't be a whole lot more attrition from that front group, but Valverde here is just flogging himself, trying to close down that last part of the gap. This is really tough at this point. He's already made the big push at the bottom. Now he's starting to suffer.
That'll be interesting. He's almost onto the back of that group as we're now back up to our two leaders at 9K left to go. So Valverde looks like he's in position to catch back onto the group that contains Contador, Rodriguez, Froome, and some of the others. But how much has he already suffered? How much energy does he have left? The one thing that'll be working in his favor is there aren't any really steep ramps at the top of the climb where he can lose a lot of time at the end of the stage, as it's now 3:16 from our two leaders back to this big chasing group at the 10K banner. So he may not be as fresh as guys like Rodriguez, Froome, and Contador, but they're not going to have the steep slopes to really distance Valverde at the end of the stage, because it does ease up more towards the top. But they're still riding hard at the front, and Valverde has also used up a lot of energy just chasing back on to try and catch these guys.
Well, right, and his whole problem right now is you can see Saxo Bank on the front absolutely lighting it up, and Valverde still does not have a draft. So these are the moments where if he doesn't close this down very soon, he may start losing time again to this lead group.
Commercial free at the end of this stage, presented by Got Chocolate Milk. Alejandro Valverde.
The impetus is gone. That's it. He's not going to catch him, Steve.
It looked like he was almost onto the back.
He just could. He made the last push, but look at the front group. The front group actually done for him.
Wow.
He just didn't have any wheels to ride. He didn't have any rest, no one to draft off of, and he couldn't do it. Navarro here has got Contador with him. He's got Froome with him.
And then Rodriguez is a little ways back here.
Yeah, I saw Rodriguez actually swing out when Navarro was riding on the front.
All right, this is back to Alejandro Valverde. He's looking around, not getting any help.
That's it.
So Navarro setting the pace. Contador just behind, Froome behind Contador.
And Nicholas Roach, the last man in the group. We saw Roach pushing the pace a little bit yesterday on that climb.
Well, Contador looking back, and he sees that Rodriguez is a little ways down the road here.
This is actually a massive day for Contador. Day where it really didn't look like on paper it would be this selective. Contador, if he just gains a few seconds over Rodriguez, he needs 5, he needs 4 on Froome, he can move up. Obviously he has Froome with him, so we're definitely going to see some changes for the overall lead team.
And still time bonuses at stake. 12, 8, and 4 for the first 3, and right now we just have 2 leaders in Tony Martin and Simon Clark. So Contador's 201, Froome is 181. Nicholas Roche at the back end of that foursome for AG2R. 9K banner, and now Rodriguez comes through here, second wheel in the white jersey.
Roach came into the day 52 seconds down, so he's riding exceptionally well. It's now Katusha leading the chase behind this group. But Navarro, remember, we saw him going off the front just a little bit ago, and now Contador is with him, and Navarro putting everything into this.
Now remember yesterday in the final climb, a series of attacks, one after the other from Contador. We haven't seen him make that big acceleration yet on this final climb. When he did that yesterday, Froome had to back off. He couldn't stay with him. Eventually, he reeled him in each time, but still he lost contact with Contador. Right now, Alberto, who we see right in the middle of the screen just a second ago, he's stayed in the saddle. Froome has been on his wheel. And now Valverde coming through that 9K banner. Boy, what a yo-yo sort of effort by Alejandro Valverde. He was over a minute back, cut the deficit in half. It went back up to over a minute. Then it got down to 17 seconds, and now it looks like he's not going to catch up to the group of the GC riders. It's been all over the place, and now it's saying 55 seconds, almost a minute from the Froome-Contador group back to the red jersey.
And it's also really surprising to me to see that Rodriguez is at the front of this group with two of his Katusha teammates chasing. To see Rodriguez get dropped on this climb, something's going on with him. It may be this fourth consecutive day of 100-degree heat that he's just not feeling right. Maybe he didn't hydrate properly overnight or even during the day as well.
He stayed with every acceleration from Contador yesterday, which makes it even more surprising. So Navarro, Contador, Froome, and Roche in that order in the chasing group. 8K to go, and they are 2:22 behind our two leaders, Tony Martin and Simon Clark, up the road.
Now, the thing that is in favor of the breakaway succeeding to contest the stage win is that, especially with Tony Martin being such a big motor, it flattens out. Hopefully he can keep it rolling.
Alejandro Valverde slipping back after getting caught in the crash earlier, chased and got it to within 17 seconds of getting back to the other GC riders, but now it looks like he's going to lose that red jersey today on stage 4, which is presented by Got Chocolate Milk, commercial free to the finish.
What a tough day for Valverde and his entire team. They went from being in such a great position at the start of the day to an absolutely horrible transgression of events throughout this day, causing them to lose the lead and second place as well.
And that is Luis Angel Mate of Cofidis, who was in that original 5-man breakaway earlier. And now this is Nicolas Roche coming to the front for AG2R ahead of Contador and Froome.
So they're not super concerned about Roche, but they certainly want to get as much time as they can over the chase. So we'll see if they bring him back. And that man there is Jesus Rosendo, the Andalucia rider on the right that was also in that early break. So he's coming back as well as Roche is going forward.
Half a dozen K left. And this is the Joaquim Rodriguez group. They're just seconds behind. These are our two leaders. 5K to go. Simon Clark ahead of Tony Martin. The remnants of a 5-man breakaway that at one point today had over 13 minutes on the field, but then a crash. The main field split up. The red jersey and overall race leader Alejandro Valverde is losing time and likely losing the race lead today as the battle is unfolding in the second group on the road. The likes of Nicolas Roche, Chris Froome, Alberto Contador, and other riders who were in the 5-man breakaway earlier are starting to come back as well, getting picked up by riders who are going forward. That is Roche there, number 19 for AG2R.
A lot of stuff happening on this climb as guys coming back from the break, guys going forward from the field.
Now that's Linus Gerdemann, number 175 for the Radio Shack Nissan team. This is an interesting group that all of a sudden has formed here. That's also Lawrence Tandam, number 168 for Rabobank. Now, just a moment ago, Roche was with Contador and Froome. He rode just ahead of them. Now, this is back to the Joaquim Rodriguez group. He's in the white jersey, sitting about fifth wheel here.
All kinds of guys taking shots at it here today. So Rodriguez obviously not having his best day, but seeing Tendam go up the road, it looks like he went past. There's Kobo there on the top of your screen with a green helmet. So he may be the only man left in that group for Movistar, but he's well down, 106.
Right, so Froome and Contador are back here. So they've been caught by the Rodriguez group. They were with Roche a minute ago, and so now they're a few seconds behind.
And so Roche took off. He got joined by Laurens Tendam. You mentioned Linus Gerdemann as well. And some guys going forward from this group. Second position there, that's Robert Heesink, the Dutchman on the Rabobank squad in the orange and blue.
And this is another group coming up to the banner with a few Euskaltel riders leading the way. That's behind everybody else we were just seeing. These are our two leaders. 4K to go. Tony Martin is at the front here. Simon Clark at the back.
We have not seen a time gap very recently, but I'm starting to have a bit of a hunch that these guys are going to stay away and contest the first two spots.
That would still leave one spot available for bonus time, 4 seconds for third place after 12 and 8 seconds for the first two spots. All right, so Joaquim Rodriguez is sitting fourth wheel in the white jersey. Here comes an attack from Caja Rual in the green jersey going up the right-hand side of the road.
This is a good time to attack if you have anything in your legs, because this group with these contenders, they're kind of looking at each other, and this is a little bit of a stalemate amongst them, and other guys are going up the road. We can see that group just off in the distance there. That's a group that peeled off, and sometimes you can get a bunch of guys that can peel away while the big guys look at each other.
These are our two leaders, Simon Clark and Tony Martin. Interesting development behind them, though. It looked like Froome, Contador, and Roche were going to ride away from everybody else. Joaquim Rodriguez was in a bigger group behind them, and all of a sudden things changed. A few riders came forward. Linus Gerdemann was one. Laurens Tendam of Rabobank was another. Contador and Froome dropped back when it looked like they were riding pretty well. So they're back with the Joaquim Rodriguez group now.
Well, Joaquim had his teammates on the front of that group. There's no doubt. He was flogging those guys, and they were doing everything they could to neutralize Froome and Contador. And so they did that job, and at that point, other guys took off because they got a little bit of rope from those general classification men.
Katusha, Rabobank, Sky, Saxo Bank. The top contenders for the GC, Rodriguez, Froome, Contador, Heesink. They're all in this group we're looking at right here. And on the far right-hand side, now upper right-hand corner, that's the group of Nicolas Roche, and that's also got Laurens Tendam in it.
Gerdermann's just at the front there. He's stretching some legs. That's Andre Zeitz in the aqua colors of Astana.
And also the Caja Rual rider in the green who attacked earlier from the field. He's also made it up to that group as well. And this is the back of that group now. They are the second group on the road, behind our leaders who are right here. Tony Martin at the front, Simon Clark at the back. Tony Martin, of course, multiple big time trial wins. Simon Clark, however, has not won a race in the last 4 years. So not only would it be his first ever Grand Tour stage, it'd be his first win of any kind in the last 4 seasons. So this would be huge if these two can stay away and Clark can get the victory. And now here's the move from the BMC rider at the 2K banner. We've seen BMC at the front of the main field today. Philippe Gilbert was the rider who had been leading BMC most of the way at that point. And now another one of their riders going forward here, and not much of a response from behind. And there's the red jersey, Alejandro Valverde. Again, he's been losing time.
These are really sad moments for a guy when you have a situation getting away from you like that. Look at this, Tony Martin putting in an attack.
That's 1K to go. So Now Martin sitting at the front, looking over his shoulder at Simon Clark. The chess game has started for the stage win on the summit finish. The remnants of the five-man breakaway that had over 13 minutes at one point today. It's down to these two fighting it out for a stage victory. Second of back-to-back summit finishes. Martin not in the most enviable position here as he swings over to the side near the barrier. He's going to back it off a little, as he doesn't want Clark to get the jump.
Still a long way to go for these guys at this pace. And we know that that group behind is chasing full speed ahead. 500 meters now, though, so they've got enough of a gap. This shouldn't be an issue, and Clark is in the perfect spot.
And here comes the rider up just behind him, but they should still have enough time to sort it out amongst themselves. They start to pick up the pace in the final few hundred meters after 4.5 hours.
This is perfect for Clark because look at this. Tony Martin is committing very early. This is just like the perfect lead out.
200 meters, here comes Simon Clark around him on his right-hand side. Clark blowing right by Tony Martin.
No contest whatsoever.
So Simon Clark is going to ride into his first ever Grand Tour stage victory here on the 4th day at the Vuelta.
And this is Bazayev. Another man holding on from the breakaway for third. So there's all the time bonuses sucked up.
12, 8, and 4 seconds for the first three across the line.
4.5 hours, and nobody expected it to end like this. Sights on the front, 10 Dom.
Then Geerdeman. And
then
Nicholas
Roach.
Roach. And the Caja Rural rider who made it up. Coming from the field as they sprint for 4th place.
Well, no time bonuses for these guys. It's just pride at this point. Top 5 on the line.
Tell you what, Nicholas Roach is going to move up on the GC. Started the day 52 seconds behind the leader Alejandro Valverde, who's losing a lot of time. And now here comes the group that features Froome, Rodriguez, Contador, Robert Hayes-Sink. They all cross together. Just over a minute behind our winner, Simon Clark of Orica Green Edge.
So about 1:03 when the GC men came to the line.
Igor Antone here. So he's lost some time for Euskaltel in the orange.
Indeed, he's going to lose about 30 seconds to the other general classification men. And this is Valverde.
Alejandro Valverde caught in a crash, was chasing the rest of the way, almost made it back up to the top GC riders, was within about 17 seconds before he realized it was not going to happen. Started to sit up at that point. Now he comes across, and he is almost 2 minutes back of the winner, Simon Clark. So Simon Clark gets his first ever Grand Tour stage victory here at the Vuelta a Espana.
It was such a long day with so much wind in the finish, and yeah, I knew Tony was going to be really strong, but I wanted to make it a really hard climb because I knew with Bazayev he's really fast, so I was really happy when Tony and I could leave the rest behind. And then we just worked together, and you know, I really backed myself in the finish. Yeah, Tony's a really good time trial, but yeah, I thought I could have him in a sprint, so I made sure he was in front and with the wind, and I just left it as late as possible.
How does it mean for you this victory?
It's my first win as a professional. I've been pro for 4 years. So many times, and I have so many seconds and third places, so I'm just so happy. Thank you very much.
Rodriguez, as he takes over the top spot, just a second ahead of Chris Froome. Alberto Contador 5 seconds back, and the two rounding out the top 5. So Rodriguez, Froome, and Contador now the top 3. Certainly not a surprise.
And no change in the relationship of the top 3's times to each other. They just move up to the top 3 spots overall now, and this thing is just getting going.
Here on Universal Sports. And our three big names are right there at the top of the GC leaderboard going into stage 5, all separated by just 5 seconds. Rodriguez, Froome, and Contador. Valverde has slipped to 9th, with Andrew Talansky still the top American, about a minute and a half back. Circuit race today in the town of Logroño.
Well, this is a very unusual type of day in the saddle for these guys. 104 miles, 168 kilometers. They're doing 8 laps of 21 kilometers each. That's 13 miles a lap. Typically, you never see this in a Grand Tour where they just hit the entire course on circuits. So today they'll be very familiar with it. It should be a field sprint.
8 looks at the finish line today. Once again, sunny and hot in northern Spain for the 5th day of the Vuelta. We'll take you to the live racing when we come back. Looking down on the field on this stage number 5 at the Vuelta a Espana. They are riding 6.5 minutes behind a lone breakaway rider who has 75.5 kilometers left to go. He's on his 5th lap, and his name is Javier Chacon, Spaniard from the Andalusia team. This is the 5th of 8 laps for the riders today. 21K per lap on this circuit race. 5th day of the 67th edition of the Vuelta a Espana. So very interesting in a lot of ways. Not often do you see a circuit race like this in the middle of a Grand Tour. Not often do you see one lone leader with such a big lead on a day like today. There is number 1, JJ Cobo, the defending Vuelta champion from last year, riding for Movistar, has not had a good few opening days to this race, losing time. And going through the feed zone here with some of the parked cars and picking up bottles and bags.
And you can see why feed zones are always a point of consternation for the riders, as there are a lot of crashes in feed zones. Notice all the soigneurs and team support out in the middle of the road there. They actually expect all the riders to only be on one side of them, but they moved so far into the road, riders ended up splitting them down the middle.
So the pace obviously backs off here as riders settle in, and no one team at the front right now. And the lead for Javier Chacon has been almost cut in half, believe it or not. He had a lead of about 12 minutes by himself at one point. The 27-year-old who's in his first ever Grand Tour. He was in the first breakaway on stage 2 on our first open road point-to-point stage. Was the first rider in the King of the Mountains jersey, and today this is a solo effort. What do you make of this?
A lot of pain, Steve. Absolutely no way for a solo guy to stay away. He got away right at the beginning of the race. They let him get a huge advantage. And without the field really even working hard to bring him back, he's going to come back on his own. One guy cannot do it.
So now they're calling it 7.5 minutes. So just like that, it's blown up again.
Well, Chacon's certainly the man on the left of your screen there is still riding very hard. He's putting everything into this. But these are the type of days where everybody knows a solo rider just can't get it done. The sprinters want this one for sure, and they have full teams behind them to chase down a lone guy like Chacon. So, you know, he probably was hoping that a few riders would come up to him and that at least would give him some relief, but that never happened.
Well, we're coming off back-to-back summit finishes. We've only had one chance for the sprinters in the first 5 days of racing up until now, and there's only a handful of legitimate sprint opportunities throughout the 3 weeks of racing, so they don't want to miss out. And this is a textbook sprinters type of stage, and it's not going to be that difficult for a sprinters team to control a breakaway or anything that goes up the road, and especially given the fact that there aren't the marquee sprinters teams here in this race, this provides a great opportunity for them to not have to do a lot of hard work over undulating terrain. They can do things pretty much at a steady pedestrian pace and still get the field sprint they're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Indeed, that should be the case, and we should look for all the main sprinters to come to the front again for this stage. John Degenkolb getting the win the last time there was a field sprint back in stage number 2, the Argos Shimano man, and he'll be another of the prime contenders today.
Well, among many intriguing things about yesterday's finish to stage number 4, how about this? The Caja Rural rider, Marcos Garcia, in the green and white. You will never see a more elated man finishing 4th in a stage at a Grand Tour, raising his arms after winning the sprint for 4th when he obviously thought that he had won.
Well, it's a chaotic day out there, and it certainly did look like he won that. I actually saw some of the other riders from the race tweeting they would have been just as elated if they had gotten 4th as well, but I think he did think he won the stage.
I mean, you know, you could still be happy to finish 4th, but isn't that a little too much?
It was a little over the top. I do believe that he thought he won. Yep.
Yeah. Histrionics, as this is the front end of the main field. Under 70K left to go. Here's our lone leader from Andalusia, Javier Chacon. Had a lead of just about 12 minutes at one point after going clear at the gun, starting today's stage. Now, just about been cut in half. The current margin is 5.5 minutes with 68K left to go. Now switching to the back end of the main field.
Well, and to put it into context for Chacon, he started the day 26 minutes, 5 seconds behind in overall time. So he would have virtually had to lap the peloton on this 21-kilometer circuit to impact the overall standings.
It was Danny Pate of Team Sky, number 184 near the back, the American just a moment ago. And now Team Sky caught the brunt of Alejandro Valverde's rage yesterday after attacking just before the crash. And what it also did, it brought up the issue of attacking when a leader is compromised, either through a crash or being held up by something. And that's really what it came down to. It wasn't just about the specifics of yesterday. It's, I think, more a philosophical discussion in the sport of cycling.
It's a really interesting custom in the sport of cycling because these guys are some of the toughest sports people on the planet, and yet they have this tradition and this sort of gentlemanly tradition of waiting if the guy who's leading the race crashes or punctures or some sort of an incident, but they don't wait if the heat of battle is fully on. They wait if nothing is happening. And it was transitioning from a very lackluster, very mellow day that was kind of a yawner into all of a sudden a crosswind battle. And when that crosswind battle started, that's when Valverde fell down. And so he was really upset because he felt like they took advantage of it.
And I think that they have every right to keep riding because, after all, it is a race. And sure, etiquette has its place in the sport and should be respected at the appropriate times. But it is a race, and you can't stop guys from racing the competition. As Davide Vigano is back in the team car for Lampre here, and especially for Team Sky, given the fact that Movistar, Valverde's team, was about to let the red jersey go. They were riding at a slow tempo, letting the breakaway get so much time yesterday. Sky was just coming forward to do the job that Movistar was reluctant to do, and that was chase down the break.
Yeah, imagine how far that break was up the road at that point. And they very easily could have had that red jersey swap shoulders, so they wouldn't have known that Mate was going to get dropped on that climb like he did. But yeah, you know, if you're in the heat of the battle, I can see why Valverde in the moment was upset because it hadn't been a race of big attacks yet, and so he really did feel as though they were taking advantage of him. But you're right. The guys are perfectly able to, and it's within their right to race, even if the guy's laying on the ground.
At the front, the red and white team is Katusha, and they took the opposite approach. They were riding with Sky, attacking at that time, and then it was Benyat Inchalsti of the Movistar team, Alejandro Valverde's teammate, who came up to Rodriguez and said, hey, Valverde was caught in the crash, and Rodriguez made the decision to pull his guys off the front and not ride, and instead wait for Valverde.
Indeed, that he did, and they kind of took the high road. I just want to mention here, Castroviejo, this is the guy who was first across the line in the team time trial on stage 1, our first overall leader. But back to Katusha and Rodriguez. Rodriguez was actually put in a very easy situation yesterday by not pushing the pace with Team Sky. He doesn't suffer the wrath of Valverde and the Movistar team, and he benefited from what Sky did because he just rode the wheels. So he was in a great position after yesterday, and now he's the race leader.
By 1 second. He's got Contador, Froome right there behind him. So the top 3 favorites really for the race are the top 3 on the GC, not necessarily in the order you would stack them as favorites, but they're all separated by 5 seconds as we are now into our 5th day here at the Vuelta. And there is the leader, Joaquim Rodriguez, who, it should come as no surprise, has taken the lead at his home Grand Tour once again for the 2nd consecutive year, but no doubt it's not the way you expected him to take the lead. If he was going to move into the red jersey, you would have thought it was going to be on a steep, short, explosive type of uphill finish, but not what we saw yesterday. It just happened to be that he was in the spot on the GC and things broke right at the end. Valverde, who was leading, lost time, and he just happened to be the guy in the right place at the right time to take the lead.
Yeah, actually very unusual considering the fact that Rodriguez actually was suffering on that climb and couldn't follow Contador and Froome when they went up the road. And fortunately for Rodriguez, his team brought the other 2 main contenders back at the end, and they all ended up finishing in that group for the same time.
So Marcos Garcia of Caja Rural a moment ago, the man who thought he won the stage, throwing his arms in the air, kissing the sky, but it was only for 4th place. But sometimes, you know, somebody's 4th place is another person's 1st place.
It's the little victories that count.
4th is the new black. Let's put it that way. It's the new hot way to finish, as our leader Javier Chacon has a lead of 3 minutes and 53K still to go. Remember, he's been out there since the start of this stage. 168K altogether, now down to 53 remaining. So he's been baking. Argo Shimano, the team in the white and the green, just ahead of Katusha. Now they are riding at the front primarily because they have a good sprinter in John Degenkolb, who they'll like to set up later.
Zondio handing off his musette bag to Stannard. Teammates on Team Sky, of course, Stannard in the white jersey, the British road champion, so the jersey very different.
Team Sky saying that now that they've won the Tour de France and they have a legitimate favorite for this Vuelta and Chris Froome, that they want to win all the Grand Tours. Going into next season, they think that they have a team that could win the Giro, the Tour, and the Vuelta. Not necessarily with the same rider, but they have the depth and the across-the-board talent to pull off that feat.
So the question is, are they tipping their hat yet as to who's going to be their leader for which? And I guess it's really hard to do that a year in advance, but the likely scenario would be to still use Wiggins for the Tour de France and try and deploy Froome possibly in the Giro Vuelta.
Seemed to work to me. If they're on the same form that they've shown this year, why not go for that?
Well, it's a good way to keep Chris Froome happy, and that's one of the big challenges of the Sky team at this point, because he is such an incredible talent that he's just really come out of nowhere at last year's Vuelta and carried that all the way through this year, and he's on a 3-year contract for Team Sky. And you got to keep the guy happy. You got to give him opportunities to win big races.
All right, so under 3 minutes to our lone leader. Field still very innocuous pace here with just over 50 kilometers left to go on Stage 5. It is Stage 5 of the Vuelta a España here on Universal Sports. The Vuelta presented by GoPro and going along nicely at the front of the race right now. Number 24 for Andalucia, Javier Chacon, a lead of 2.5 minutes. 44K left to go. This is the back end of the field that has been pursuing him all day long. He attacked in the opening moments. Number 131 of Lotto Belisol, Jurgen van den Broek, coming off a 4th place finish at the Tour de France, but clearly does not have the same form here at the Vuelta. He's lost time in the opening few days of the Spanish Grand Tour.
Van den Broek actually saying before he came here that he was coming for stages, and he said actually after the Tour de France he enjoyed life for a few weeks and just took it easy. And if he had been really good the other day, he would have actually been disappointed, because that meant he prepared for the Tour de France improperly.
195 riders back in the field. Just the only other rider out on the course, Javier Chacon, who is still setting the pace and heading back towards that finish line that marks the start of the penultimate circuit around Logroño. Hitting that finish line 8 times altogether today. It'll be 6 laps down, 2 to go when he hits the line the next time. And hanging on to that margin of almost 2.5 minutes. It was as high as 12 minutes at one point earlier in the stage.
Plowing a very lonely furrow up the road there as it continues to come down. As you said, just now 2.5 minutes. And it's just been this way the whole day. It's been a foregone conclusion that he could not stay away. And it was just a question of how long he would be out there. He'll get most aggressive for the day, though.
It's a pretty easy decision. 2 minutes with 39K left to go for our leader. This is the field, still being led most of the way by Katusha in the red and white, the team of overall leader Joaquim Rodriguez. And there is Chacon from Andalusia. Lonely day out front for this guy who is going to spend the bulk of 168 kilometers riding by himself as he gets the latest time gap, which puts it just over 2 minutes, his lead back to this field. And the last time that the Vuelta started a stage in Logroño, it was back in 2005, but the last time they finished was more recently, 2007. That was a stage won by Oscar Freire, who is not in the race this year. And back in 2005, that was the year that Denis Menchov won one of his 2 Vueltas, and Menchov is in the race, but riding for Joaquim Rodriguez on Katusha, and Rodriguez, the current overall race leader.
Mellow time back there in the peloton, no doubt about it. The 2 teams on the front, Argos Shimano on the right, and on the left, FDJ Big Mat, Nasser Buhani for FDJ, and John Degenkolb for Argos. I mean, certainly Degenkolb has shown with his stage 1 win that he's got good form right now, but I wonder if this is not the day for him. Maybe a little bit better on an uphill sprint like they had on stage number 2. It's just a 1% rise. We may see some.
Now this should be a textbook that they will have already seen multiple times. It's flat, pretty straight, and nobody's really having to work all that hard. I mean, sprinters' teams haven't even come to the front. It's been the team of Rodriguez who has been setting what is still a pretty harmless tempo at the front, just steady and easy. And they've been gradually bringing back the time of the leader, Javier Chacon. Down under 2 minutes here for Chacon. So, Gogo, as a rider, when you are out front this long, by yourself, all day, what goes through your head? I mean, you got to do something to keep your mind somewhat sharp. You got to do something to keep yourself entertained, because otherwise, it would almost be a mind-numbing day, right?
It's mind-numbing no matter what you do, and I'm trying to think back to my career. I don't recall having ever been off the front solo for this long. Breakaway stuff was something I did a lot of, but it was usually with more than one person. And a day like this, all you can do is just keep focusing on getting it done and not letting yourself wander off and lose concentration and lose your speed in the process.
I mean, you think about it, even in training a lot, these guys go out together. It's not often that you're riding for so long just by yourself. So, I wonder what kind of mind games, perhaps singing to yourself, something just to keep yourself entertained and pass the time.
Well, a lot of it is you'll take it section by section. The long, straight roads are the worst, and they certainly have a bunch of those on this circuit, and now the gap under 2 minutes for Chacon. But when you have these corners, you just kind of pick these little parts of the course and say, all right, to that corner, to that corner. And it's just part of the psyche of the professional cyclists. I mean, their entire day in a lot of these races is built on picking their little battles and suffering through them as he gets some more ice to put on the back.
Well, he was obviously lonely, called the team car up for some conversation, picking up some ice and a little conversation.
Not even doing a remotely sticky bottle there, as you would expect him to give himself a little bit of a push off. The officials wouldn't care, just to give a little bit of respite to those legs, but just delicately took it out of the director's hand.
And you notice there wasn't that much conversation, and that's really because, what are you going to say? I mean, if you're the director, everybody knows the situation, so there's not a lot of strategy that goes into it at this point.
No, at this point for him, it's just hang on as long as you can. The peloton's going to get you. It's just a question of when. And the peloton wants to kind of leave it late because they don't want things to get completely ignited. Whenever no one's off the front, then people start thinking, oh, I can pop off the front and get the stage win, and it just gets chaotic. So they want to leave it as late as possible.
So what about Joaquin Rodriguez as the leader? He admitted that yesterday when he took the red leader's jersey from Valverde that he was sort of subdued. He didn't really want to take it given the circumstances that surrounded it, but he is the new race leader here. There's a long way to go, a lot of mountains in the final 2.5 weeks. So how about how long he is going to hold it at this point?
He's in a really good spot. Tomorrow, stage number 6, they have a Category 3 climb, and it's got some switchbacks. It's a great day for him to hold it. Then there's another Sprinter's Day. Then there's a Cat 1 climb. I mean, he could be in the jersey for a very long time. His real test may be stage 11, the individual time trial.
Now, clearly, he's going to be at a disadvantage to guys like Contador and De Froome. And Rodriguez's time trialing ability has improved, but certainly not to the level of a Contador, Froome, and some of the others. So he's going to lose time. It's just a matter of how much time can he potentially get on some of the uphill finishes, maybe time bonuses. Can that offset what he'll lose in the time trial?
He's a very strange character, and I speak with his director, Valerio Piva, regularly. And Piva was telling me that recently, up until the beginning of this year, Rodriguez would get off his bike after a time trial and say he wasn't tired. And Piva said, okay, we need to work on that. You need to get off your time trial bike and feel absolutely shot. And he's starting to get that focus. It's not that he doesn't have the power. It's that he can't get the focus mentally to hurt himself by himself in an individual time trial.
Now, the good thing for him, there is only one individual time trial in this race, and he's already made it through the team time trial, and he's got the lead by 1 second over Chris Froome at this point, so he just has that one individual TT to get through. And then he'll still have some more summit finishes after that to recover that time. So if there was going to be a Grand Tour he was ever going to win, this is pretty much the profile for him.
That's a great
minute now for Chacon. And the pace has certainly picked up at the front of the field.
He doesn't have a long time left at this point. As soon as that peloton starts riding a little bit quicker, as they've started to, one tired guy has no chance whatsoever to hang out there for very long.
So they could wind up reeling him in with still quite a ways to go. And we may see some other attacks after that, but still nowhere to really get away. I mean, no launching pads in terms of terrain or hills or anything to really springboard. So it's going to be flat, and if anybody is going to get away, they're going to have to do it with their own sheer power, own energy, and it's unlikely it'll stay all the way to the finish.
Teams of the sprinters now starting to sort of hone their attack for how they're going to take control of this race right at the end. I did notice a bunch of the blue jerseys and blue helmets of Garmin Sharp just sitting about 5th to 10th wheel, about 5 of them, and they'll be riding for their sprinter Coldo Fernandez. Fernandez crashed in the team time trial, was pretty banged up, was not really part of the guys that factored in on the stage number 2 bunch finish, but maybe he's feeling a little bit sprightlier today.
No one team in control, but it's a pretty frantic pace there at the front of the field as our leader here comes up on the final 30K. Javier Chacon, 27 years of age, his first ever Grand Tour, had a lead of just about 12 minutes at one point and now down to the final seconds. With a guy who was in the breakaway on Stage 2 and wore the first King of the Mountains jersey. And that is the team of Alberto Contador, Saxo Bank in the yellow, blue, and black. There's Contador there on the left-hand side of the screen rolling through. Chris Froome in the white glasses in the background there for Team Sky. There he is working his way up the right-hand side of the road. So Froome not too far behind Contador. Those two separated by just 4 seconds on the GC. It's Rodriguez, the overall leader. Froome in second by 1 second. Contador 5 seconds off Rodriguez's leading time.
And take notice for sure of how the complexion of this peloton is starting to change right now. There's a lot more of a sense of urgency in there as teams starting to jockey for position and thinking about the inevitable, which has to be a field sprint today. So no team wants to get on the front and commit all their resources right now with 18 miles to go, but they do want to be close enough to the front that if another team starts to really put the hammer down, they're in a good place to just fall right in line and be close and take control when they want to.
You're going to see the GC riders also near the front trying to avoid any crashes that may occur. And let's just see how far back they are. I bet it's not too far. And there they are.
Everybody getting lined up on the left. FDJ for Buhani, right next to them for Viviani, Liquigas Cannondale in the green jerseys. Contador's team in the middle there in the blue and yellow for the general classification, just keeping him safe.
So for the first time all day long, they have gotten their sights set on Javier Chacon, the leader. He left them in the opening moments of the stage, went out to almost a 12-minute lead, and now they got him in their sights with under 30 kilometers left and still one full circuit to ride. Already been brought back. The Rio Ebro in Logroño, which is also the capital city of Rioja, known for the Rioja cuisine and wine. More for the wine than the cuisine, but that's the way things happen in Spain. Typically, you're more known for the wine than the food.
Yeah, see, I'm a food guy. 1K here for these guys. So the tightest part of this circuit is what we just saw the guys going through. And so the next time around, look for it to be strung out very much single file through most of that.
So Rabobank coming to the front more for their GC. Do have Matty Breschel, who's a pretty fast guy, but doesn't really hang with the best sprinters.
He doesn't. Breschel's been a very interesting character the last few seasons because there have been times when he's been literally the toughest guy in a classic and then had punctures and mishaps take him out of the running. And then he's had all these injuries and he's really had a very difficult last couple of seasons, and he is over stage win. It would be great to see him get a win, but we haven't really seen him showing that he's ready to put the bad streak behind him.
Got to get the shades ready for the sprint. And now from the front, 11K left to go. Left-hand side, light blue shoulders, that's Omega Pharma Quick Step. The orange and blue, that is Rabobank. And now Rabobank to the front of the field. Sky is on the far left now in the dark colors.
And you know, I'm starting to reconsider this a little bit for Rabobank on the front. I mean, they do have Mollema and Heysink in the top 5 for the overall. But Breschel, he got that stage win back recently, just the 3rd of August in the Tour of Burgos, Vuelta a Burgos. So he got a stage win there. Maybe he is telling the guys, look, I got the goods today. You get me into position, I can win this thing.
If you're just judging by the only other sprint we've had so far in the first 5 days of the Vuelta, that was back on stage number 2. Breschel was nowhere in the mix that day. You had John Degenkolb winning. Ben Swift was there. Ella Viviani for Liquigas Cannondale. Klaus Lodovic, BMC. So will we see some other new faces emerge at the finish today? with 10K now left to go.
I think we're likely to see a fairly different top 5 today because it's purely flat. Alan Davis doesn't really like these totally flat sprints, and so I don't think he's going to be vying for one of the top steps on the podium. Bonatti could be a lot better. He was 10th on the first day. Nasser Bouhanni, the French national champion. This could be a great day for him.
And Omega Pharma Quickstep has been at the front for a while now. Gert Steegmans may be feeling good today. He'd be their guy.
He doesn't even have Swift on his wheel. I was thinking if I saw Froome in the win that he was trying to lead out Ben Swift for the win, but he just found himself up there amongst the Argos boys. Looking around, looking back, presumably to get his team together.
Final 3 kilometers of stage number 5. Final of 8 circuits around the town of Logroño.
And now that they're inside those final 3 kilometers, if there is a crash that causes a split in the field, the riders split off the back will get the same time as the group they were with. So at this point, it is down to stage places. Now, if there's a legitimate split in the pack and you're in the back and there's no crash, well, then you just lose time.
Teams now fighting for control at the front. Very fast on these accommodating roads. Over 60K an hour.
Radio Shack has taken control away from, and I would say wrestled control away from Argos Shimano here as they head into this right-hander.
Well, nobody in the field has won more individual Vuelta stages than Radio Shack Nissan's Daniele Bonatti. He has 5 for his career. Was not a factor in the sprint back on stage 2.
Thomas Lofquist just on the front for a moment there for Radio Shack, now being overtaken by a single Argos rider, but basically both these teams keeping the pace high for their respective sprinters.
Inside of the final 2 kilometers. Still a tight right-hand turn coming up before they get to the 1K red kite. Radio Shack Nissan, Argos Shimano. The teams at the front. Bonatti is the Radio Shack Nissan sprinter. John Degenkolb, the sprinter for Argos Shimano. He was the stage 2 winner a couple of days ago.
Bonatti sitting in 4th right now as 2 riders peel off concurrently. Now he's up into 3rd.
Carmen Sharp coming forward. In the blue and white. Here's the right-hand turn. You'll see that red kite right there. 1K left to go.
Pretty straight from here. A slight chicane inside the final 350 meters or so. But this is pretty much straightforward drag race to the line.
Lotto Bellasol picking up the pace. Argos Shimano still there. Radio Shack Nissan. Liquigas on the far left. Lampre getting into the mix. Ben Swift is in position for Team Sky with the blue helmet, Dart kit. Just about a half a kilometer left to go. It's Argos Shimano in the white in the middle, trying to set up Degenkolb for his 2nd sprint win of this opening week.
Really leading it out at a high rate of speed now for Argos Shimano.
Daniele Bonatti making a move. Argos Shimano now launching John Degenkolb down the stretch. Final few meters. Here comes Degenkolb against Bonatti, and it looks like Degenkolb gets his 2nd stage win of the Vuelta for Argos Shimano.
They're very close at the line. We'll have to look once again at the replay on that. But it definitely does look like it goes to Argos Shimano.
His team did the work there at the end, and he gets the stage win, his 2nd in the first 5 days of the Vuelta a Espana. His 8th victory this season alone, and 2nd ever Grand Tour stage win.
Daniele Bonatti hitting out a little bit early, but Degenkolb coming by him late and getting his 2nd stage win, his 8th win of the season. This is turning out to be a very nice Vuelta for Team Argos Shimano.
Both riders went pretty early. Again, not the typical lead-out trains of the sprint teams at this race. So sometimes things happen And the timing isn't just the way they want it. But for Degenkolb, it was just right.
Yeah, it seemed that his teammate ran out of gas a little bit far from the line, so he had to open up the sprint. Then Bonatti came by him, and then right here, Degenkolb had to really dig deep to get onto the draft and then slingshot around Bonatti to shut him down there for the win.
So John Degenkolb gets the stage victory ahead of Daniele Bonatti. No change in the general classification. Joaquim Rodriguez is still the overall leader by 1 second on Chris Froome and by 5 seconds on Alberto Contador. And now for Todd Gogulski, I'm Steve Schlanger. 5 days down, and we'll see you tomorrow for Stage 6. It's Stage 6 of the Vuelta a Espana, presented by GoPro here on Universal Sports. Steve Schlanger, Todd Gogulski, and it couldn't get any tighter at the top. Joaquim Rodriguez, a 1 second advantage over Chris Froome. Alberto Contador within 5 seconds, and there are still some other big names all within 1 minute of the overall race lead. And for today's 6th day of racing, they are heading northeast through northern Spain to yet another uphill finish.
A tricky day, guaranteed to bring fireworks starting out earlier at Tarzona, making their way above the town of Jaca to the medieval fort. And in the final 2 kilometers, 1.2 miles, it climbs through 13 hairpins. Pitches as steep as 14%. Look for positioning to be key at the end and a real battle at the top of the standings.
2 Category 3 climbs in the last 20K, and there is the summit finish. We'll have the live racing of Stage 6 when we come back. We come back to a breakaway of 5 riders with 74 kilometers left to go on Stage 6. They have a lead of 3 minutes and 12 seconds over the main field going through the feed zone. They still have both of the day's 2 climbs up ahead, a pair of Cat 3s that'll come in the final 20K, and then the summit finish waiting at the end. The red line is where the riders are right now, and you see the road slowly going uphill, just about all the way from here to the finish of the stage. And Katusha is riding back at the head of the peloton, the team in the red and white. Also the team of overall race leader Joaquim Rodriguez, who is also in the red jersey. He's near the back of that line of red and white riders at the front. Rodriguez in the red jersey for the 2nd consecutive day, and he's made no indecision about what today has in store. It's going to be a tough finish, and he's expected to try and defend that jersey. In fact, he says he's going out to win today's stage.
It's a very good finish for Rodriguez. When he's on form, he is the best in the world at this type of uphill finish. And to make it even more suitable to him, the 13 hairpin corners on the way up just over the final mile to the medieval fort above the town of Jaca. It means that if people are not in good position, they will not have any chance whatsoever to vie for that finishing sprint line.
This is Thomas DeHent of Vacan Soleil. He's in the breakaway. He's the highest placed rider on the general classification from the breakaway group at 7 minutes 22 seconds behind Rodriguez, the 25-year-old, coming off a 3rd place finish at the Giro this year, and also postponing his wedding because of the Giro. He also then skipped the Tour de France because of the same wedding and its 2nd pushback date, and now he's finally married and says he's going to wait to honeymoon until mid-October. Pushed back enough races, he's rearranged his schedule so many times, he says, you know what, I'm going to wait till October, then we'll go and we'll do the honeymoon thing.
But my question for you is, where's he going to honeymoon after all this anticipation?
I'm still working on it. Probably a tropical island, that'd be my guess.
Yeah, it seems to be the usual. Martin Mascant there, number 97 for Garmin Sharp in that breakaway move. He's been on the team for 5 years. This year, the Omega Pharma Quick-Step rider, Christoph van der Walle.
That's very interesting, the breakaway today compared to the last couple of days. Their lead now just over 3 minutes, and it's never gone beyond the 3 minute 48 second mark. So as we see right here, it's at 3:23 now. The last couple of breakaways have gotten large amounts of time, 12 minutes, 13 minutes, but today the peloton really keeping a close eye on these guys.
Well, I was actually just speaking with the director of Joaquim Rodriguez just about a half hour ago, And I asked him if the goal was to definitely bring back that breakaway so that Rodriguez could get the stage win if he's got good legs and get the time bonus. He said, absolutely, that's their goal. It's a day that Rodriguez has been thinking about for a long time coming into the race. And so if they can execute it, that's what they'll do.
Well, it's another hot day with no cloud cover whatsoever. Temperature right now about 95 degrees. They've hardly seen any rain in the first 6 days of the Vuelta. It's been just about like this. Bright sunshine out on the open road. These guys have been baking.
Yeah, just about sweltering every single day as they're into their 6th day of racing. And notice a little bit, the roads are a little bit smaller today. They're also rougher. So today is actually a pretty challenging day, even though it doesn't look like it's super challenging on the profile. We're going to see a lot happening in the last hour of the bike race today. And the final climb has some very steep pitches as well as very rough pavement to go with all the other things the riders are faced with today.
All right, so it's lunchtime at the Vuelta. A little tapas, midday. 3:22, the margin from this main field up to the breakaway, and still over 70K left. Yesterday at the USA Pro Challenge, Tom Danielson was the first across the iconic Independence Pass in Colorado, and then in the stage into Aspen just barely hung on ahead of the charging field after 5 hours on the bike. Stage 3 from Gunnison to Aspen, Danielson gets the stage win, and his teammate Christian Vandevelde, as a result, will also take over the race lead, going to stage 4, which you can see today, 4 Eastern, on the NBC Sports Network. .5 kilometers left to go on stage 6 of the Vuelta a Espana. Katusha at the front of the field, just over 3 minutes behind a 5-man breakaway, crossing the 3-hour mark into today's hot and sunny stage, heading northeast in Spain to the 3rd summit finish of the opening week. Both of the climbs coming in the last 20 kilometers of racing. And what will also be very interesting to note is not only the steepness of the final climb, but Gogo, also the battle going into that final climb, because the road is narrow, and especially on the lower slopes of that climb, it's narrow as you get onto the climb itself. As you see, the conversation here is between Joaquim Rodriguez and Alejandro Valverde, who's wearing the white jersey as the leader of the combined classification. Valverde was wearing the red jersey before it went over to Rodriguez.
Well, those two are probably on quite a bit better terms than Valverde with Team Sky, as he was really upset and bent out of shape about having Sky drilling it on the front in the crosswind several days ago when he was on the ground in that crash. And a lot of words were said between those two teams, for sure.
And Rodriguez, for his part, said that once he realized and was told by Benyat and Chosti of the Movistar team that Valverde had been caught up in the crash, he pulled his team back. They quit riding while Sky kept going. So maybe the feelings are a little more easy between Rodriguez and Valverde at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, just noticing there, looked like Rodriguez stopping on the side of the road and maybe also doing that with some Movistar riders. So when you stop for a natural, it's always good to have a lot of other guys with you, and that's probably what they were discussing there. Make sure that you don't have any miscommunication and have the field go up the road in some attacking fashion.
Jan Ullrich actually came out yesterday and said that he felt that everybody should have waited for Valverde. And of course, Ullrich was involved in that famous incident where he crashed while racing Lance Armstrong at the Tour, and then Armstrong waited for him. So perhaps his opinion is somewhat colored by that, but he felt that, hey, it's the race leader. People should respect that and at least allow him to get back into the swing of things and not take advantage of a compromised situation.
It just goes to show the nature of the complexities of these types of situations, because professional riders are really all over the map on their opinions, and some are in support of Valverde, some are not in support of Valverde, and I'm of the opinion that the race was starting to happen in the crosswind, and crosswind battles are always dangerous. There are very often crashes in crosswind battles, and if you have to wait when there's a crash in a crosswind battle, you won't even be able to have the bike race. So it's, to me, you know, it's unfortunate, obviously. A guy lost the overall lead due to a crash, but the race was on. Now, if there was a crash right now in the peloton, I would expect the peloton to wait if Joaquim Rodriguez crashed, because they're not actually racing each other at this moment.
Still rolling along at a pretty good clip here. Under 60K to go for the 5 leaders, who we see right here. 320 up the road. And just finishing my thought from earlier, it's very narrow at the beginning of the final climb today, so you're going to see a big fight for position, guys coming along at a really high rate of speed going into that climb, because it's going to be a big difference if you're in the front 10 versus outside the first 40. If you're not near the front of the field at that point, you're going to lose some time.
Oh, there's no doubt. Yeah, with all those switchbacks and the explosive nature of guys hitting that final mile with pitches as steep as 14%, there's going to be a lot happening at the end. Notice also this gap to this breakaway group, still over 3 minutes. Right now, Katusha's not really on the front drilling it because their team leader's taking a little bit of a break, but they've been riding very consistently. So this race is going to be very hard from here to the finish. It's windy out as well. If the wind turns to a crosswind at any point, that is really going to create some messy stuff in the peloton.
I think eventually what we're going to see today is not necessarily who is the best long-term climber, because it's not one of those long grinding climbs, but what we're going to find out is who is the most explosive. And if Rodriguez maybe has that little extra 1 or 2% beyond what Contador has at this point, because Contador came in saying he wasn't going to be at his best in this first week because he hasn't been racing for so long. So can Rodriguez have that quick bolt, that burst at the end, create a little separation between himself and Contador, maybe 20 seconds, half a minute, something like that, and also take a time bonus on top of it?
Yeah, I think half a minute is a huge ask. I even think 20 seconds is probably out of the question. But, you know, a handful of seconds plus a time bonus is a possibility. I'd be surprised if it were more than 10 seconds advantage for anybody at the very top of that climb against their main competitors, because it's...
This is the Vuelta a Espana presented by GoPro on Universal Sports. Stage number 6 of the 67th Vuelta. And this is a 5-man breakaway whose lead is just under 4 minutes on the main field with 46 kilometers left to go. We still have 2 Category 3 climbs, 1 intermediate sprint. All the action set to happen inside the final hour of racing today. And it is Martin Maaskant riding in his second Vuelta, the 29-year-old from the Netherlands for Garmin Sharp, leading this 5-man group right now. The man at the back for Lotto Belisol is Joost van Leeuwen, the 28-year-old Dutch rider in his first Vuelta for Lotto.
Well, Van Leeuwen is in trouble right now. You can see it as this road is turning up a little bit, and he's starting to slide off the back.
Those are the results of the first of the 2 intermediate sprints that happened earlier. De Hent, Van der Walle, and Veining, the first 3 from the breakaway. That is La Peña Dam over the Gallego River, built way back in 1913 and still standing. Some gorgeous shots along the way here, alongside the river, framing a very picturesque stage number 6 today at the foot of the Pyrenees Mountains and heading towards the town of Jaca, that is right alongside the French border in northern Spain. So the riders in the field approaching the dam now, led by Katusha, the team of overall leader Joaquim Rodriguez in the red and white. There's your postcard shot for the Vuelta. You will see that on the poster next year for the 68th edition.
You can pretty much guarantee that. The bridge quite small and a bit treacherous in the peloton. Luckily, it is not the lead into the final climb.
Across La Peña Dam and onward.
Very nice shot there, giving us a real sense of the speed as you can see the riders whipping by, and you could also hear the sound of their wheels.
See how it's single file there at the front of the field. Still a pretty good pace being set by Katusha, with Movistar, the team of Alejandro Valverde, right behind them.
This is definitely a good day for Valverde, and he is a guy who certainly has something to prove after losing the red jersey a couple of days ago. And it's a good finish for him. He could do some damage.
Let's keep in mind, though, that he didn't come here to be Movistar's team leader. That was supposed to be the defending Vuelta champion JJ Cobo, but he has really never been a factor. Lost time on the opening day when his team won the team time trial and was bothered by an infected wisdom tooth prior to the start of the Vuelta. Lost 10 days of valuable training time, so Valverde came here as a plan B for the team, but really thrust into the leadership role right off the bat. Held the jersey of race leader for a couple of days, now in position to potentially get it back. He's wearing the white jersey as leader of the combined classification today for the second straight day. And his team is up there with Katusha, chasing this 5-man move that has 3.5 minutes right now and 44K left.
Well, these guys have some real staying power here in this move, because the field has really not let up. It has been a bit of a stalemate for the last hour as this breakaway has just held on right around 3.5 minutes.
His Moscot back at the Garmin Sharp team car.
His teammates call him Sleepy Martin. He's got to make sure he gets his rest. Big breakaway day for him.
Well, riding in his second Vuelta. No wins in the last 4 years, so every chance he gets in a breakaway, it's a chance to do something he hasn't done in quite some time. Now, the first of the 2 Category 3 climbs will summit with 16.4K left to go, so still a ways away from the first of the 2 climbs on the day. Following that climb, it's an intermediate sprint with 5K to go, and then the last climb to the summit finish starts at 3.8K remaining. Euskaltel, the team in the orange and black, the team of Igor Antone, who's not been much of a factor so far after saying that he was building his entire season around this Vuelta, but they're in there, middle of the pack.
Well, Antone is still within a minute in the general classification, but just barely at 57 seconds. So, you know, all is not lost for him. In the high mountains, he could still ride up into the top 5 if things go well. But for him to win this thing overall, that's going to be a pretty tough sell at this point.
You still have so many riders, almost 20 that are within a minute of the lead, but it's hard to see how this is going to come down to anything but a 3-rider race between Rodriguez, Froome, and Contador. You still have guys like Mollema and Haysink who are in the top 5, and they're right there, less than 10 seconds back, but the way Contador and Rodriguez are both riding, the way Froome has been riding all season long, it's really hard to see any other guy coming in and knocking those 3 off.
Yeah, certainly what we've been seeing are those guys really dominating the uphill finishes, but we certainly have to also just bide our time a little bit here, just like the riders are, and wait for the big mountains, because the big mountains can change a lot. Guys that are good at finishing on these short uphills, well, that's one thing, but the big mountains, that's where you can gain and lose minutes at a time.
Our 5 leaders, 3:44 ahead. Now think about this for Alberto Contador. It's kind of an unknown coming off the suspension, what he is exactly going to be like throughout the 3 weeks of racing. But when was the last time that he did not win a Grand Tour when he came in fresh? Remember, going back to last year when he lost the Tour de France to Cadel Evans, he had raced one of the hardest Giros of all time and won that by a decisive margin. So he was still feeling the effects of that, but it's been a long time since Contador came into any Grand Tour fresh and did not win. So he has that going for him this year and already looks pretty good in this opening week.
I would say it was 2006 was the last time that he didn't win a Grand Tour that he started, when he was really unknown at that point. I mean, since then, he's been the winner in every race except for the Tour de France last year when he came in tired. Actually, I guess it was last year. And he won the Giro. He was tired from the Giro, and he just didn't have the suds in the Tour. But other than that, he's won every one he's done for a long time.
That Giro result wiped out because of the doping-related suspension. But now he's back, his first Grand Tour since the suspension, and now 5 seconds off the race lead. 5 leaders still holding on to a relatively comfortable margin here on stage 6. Climb is the longer of the two, just about 12K altogether. Final climb inside of 4K long. Now, not often do you see all of the climbing coming so late in the stage. Inside the last 20K, both peaks will be reached. Many times you'll have at least one climb earlier in the day, but both of the two climbs stacked near the back today.
Well, look at this. We have another team who's come to the front, the team of Saxo Bank for Alberto Contador. So now they're starting to taste a little bit of blood as well and going for the setup for their leader.
We have Saxo Bank, Movistar, and Katusha at the front. Teams of Contador, Valverde, and Rodriguez. No Team Sky at the front for Chris Froome, who once again is just 1 second back of Rodriguez on the GC.
Froome, to me, in the top 3, he's the guy that's the most at risk today because he's not quite as explosive generally as Rodriguez and Contador. When I talked with Froome's director, Marcus Ljungqvist, yesterday, I asked him, look, is today about limiting his losses? And he said, oh no, today is about going for a stage win and trying to get time if possible. But I had a hard time believing that was really a possibility. I mean, I think that's wishful thinking, but I don't think that history shows that's a good option for Froome today.
Peter Veining there, number 159 in the breakaway for Orica Green Edge, riding in his 4th Vuelta this year, but his first in the last 4 years. Hasn't been back to the Spanish Grand Tour since 2008. And the Vuelta is actually the only Grand Tour where he hasn't won a stage. He's won stages in the Tour de France, the Giro d'Italia, but never here in the Vuelta. Looking for one in what is now his 4th appearance.
And I think today it's going to be pretty tough to get, especially now that gap has come down below 3 minutes. They were doing such a good job of keeping it at 3.5 minutes, but look at this. In the last 5 to 10 kilometers, they've lost about a minute of that gap they had.
Our 4 riders left in the breakaway would be Thomas de Hent of Vaca Soleil, Peter Veining of Orica Green Edge, Christophe Van de Walle of Omega Pharma Quickstep, and the Garmin Sharp rider Martin Mascant.
Mascant has been very good in the classics in the past. 2009 he was 4th in the Tour of Flanders, but my oh my, it is definitely going at the front.
BMC with a few riders near the front. Alessandro Ballan is the second one, who's sitting just about 4th or 5th wheel, it looks like.
This is Nairo Quintana for Movistar, the only man on that team who is not Spanish. He's the Colombian. Looks like we still have Nicky Sorensen second there. Indeed we do.
They're riding as hard as they've ridden all day long here at the front of the field.
Yeah, Ballan in the 3rd spot, and then the Katusha men. So the breakaway pretty much has about a 0.5%, I'd give it a 1/4% chance of success at this point.
Well, for about 40 kilometers, it was amazing how the gap stayed within a specific range. The field kept them right between 3.5 and 4 minutes for the most part for a long way. And now they decided to ride at single file, and that's how quickly it comes down.
And did you notice just how hard it was there with Quintana on the front? Nicky Sorensen was sitting second, and he couldn't even sit on the wheel. He just pulled out of the lineup and said, okay, I'm done. I can no longer do any pacemaking here for Contador.
Now Movistar had the first 2 overall leaders of this race after winning the team time trial on stage 1. They first put Jonathan Castroviejo into the red jersey. Then it went from him to Alejandro Valverde before moving over to Joaquim Rodriguez as they pick up Joost van Leyen pretty quickly here, one of the original breakaway riders.
That was very quick. But also look at how much the gap has come down since Van Leyen was dropped. They've lost about 45 seconds more of their advantage. So it is really coming down quickly at this point.
So the first of 2 climbs here at the end of stage number 6. As they ride back into the Pyrenees after skipping this mountain range last year at the Vuelta a Espana. They come back here in 2012 in the 67th edition near the border with France. A hot day with temperatures over 100 degrees. Already been out there for almost 4 hours and still just getting onto the first climb of the day. These are riders off the back of the main field.
There's going to be a lot of attrition here at this pace, as a lot of guys are going to get popped out and they're not going to make it back on because the peloton is not going to slow down whatsoever.
Well, again, it's only the first climb, but the racing has really picked up in its intensity. The weather has been extremely hot, so guys are suffering nonetheless.
You don't usually see this type of separation on a Category 3 climb, and the reason we're seeing this is obviously the heat, but it's also they had this grind up to the base of it for so long, this 1-2% grade for a very long time, and it just served to soften everybody up, and the pace has been pretty relentless today. Almost the whole time we've been on the air, the field has been pretty close to single file at the front.
So for our leaders, about 8K to the summit of the climb. This is the field just a minute and a half back now, and they are really kicking up the tempo in pursuit. Now the gap is certainly unthreatening, headed down to a minute with just 4 riders left from the original 5-man group. And now just under a minute with 23 kilometers left to go. About 6K to the summit of this Cat 3. You can see on this type of a climb, the slope is gentle enough that guys can stay in the saddle, still ride at a pretty high rate of speed, benefit from the draft, as these are the 4 leaders.
There's plenty of draft at the speed these guys are going on this climb. And the final climb, well, things are going to shake up a fair bit there, especially with all the hairpins. It's going to be a lot of decelerating and accelerating, and the further back you are, the worse that's going to be. So the first few guys into those hairpins will have a much steadier pace, and it will give them a big advantage.
Well, today definitely looks like it's going to be a time bonus type of stage with 12, 8, and 4 for the first 3 across the line. And remember, Rodriguez, Froome, and Contador are separated by just 5 seconds at the top of the general classification coming in. So those are the riders and their teams that we've seen at the front of the field here in the last several kilometers. So if it comes down to them, this GC is going to be shaped by time bonuses at the end of stage 6, as other riders here are off the back of the main field.
A lot of damage being done on a Category 3 climb. You usually don't see it like this. The motorcycle now having to blaze back up to close down the gap. Give us some more images.
Some wide gaps opening up.
There are going to be some big time gaps at the end of today, there's no doubt. And a lot of it is just simply because the peloton has been really rocking this road up this climb.
One minute with under 22K left to go. Again, this climb summits with 16.4 left, and then they also have another intermediate sprint coming up with 5K remaining before the final climb starts with 3.8K left to go.
So So this is the first time in a while we've seen things relax just a little bit in the peloton, and right away the breakaway starts to pick up some time again. So the breakaway is still going very steady, and it's all up to the peloton here to ratchet up that pace to bring him back. Looks like Juan Antonio Flecha has made it back to the front there, and he just did a big turn.
Now, all the teams of the top GC riders have taken turns at the front of the field, working on the margin to these 4 riders. Again, it's De Hent, the best placed on the GC at 7:22 back. For the guy who was 3rd at the Giro this year, won that huge mountain stage on the Stelvio, also won a stage at Paris-Nice earlier this season.
Very similar to his win in the Stelvio in the Giro. I mean, it was a breakaway day where he was out there all day and then by himself at the end. I mean, that's really how he's made his career, is massive gaps on individual stage wins and stage races.
He's hoping for... Now, too often, if you do the work and your guy can't come through, it's demoralizing. And it makes you less likely to really be able to dig deep the next time. But they know that Contador, they put him in the position, he is going to come through. And right now his team is at the front. Sky sitting in the 2nd position, and then the team of Katusha with the overall leader Joaquim Rodriguez in the front 10 or 12, it looks like. BMC moving up as well.
Just saw a bunch of the light blue jerseys of Omega Pharma Quickstep going toward the front, moving up the right-hand side and the left-hand side of the peloton. So their director must be in their ear saying, guys, haul yourselves to the front.
It is Martin Mascot from the breakaway.
And it looks as though they may have just given him a bottle and said bye-bye. So it looks like maybe he's been dropped.
Well, it started as a 5-man breakaway. They lost Joost van Leyen of Lotto Belisol much earlier. He's back with the field now. Martin Mascant of Garmin Sharp now getting dropped.
Yeah, look at this crosswind here.
And that's the Omega rider, Christophe van der Walle, who's also losing contact. So the entire breakaway now splitting apart here on the upper slopes of this Category 3 climb.
So that should leave Veining and De Hent up the road, but that wind out of the right, most of the time they're going to get shelter from these trees. But when racing is really on, a little bit of a crosswind on a climb, that's a deadly combination.
Just about 1K to the top of the climb, and now this is Peter Veining, who has been dropped. So it's Thomas De Hent of Vacansoleil out front by himself at this point.
Veining is looking very frustrated there. The Shimano neutral support car trying to hand him up a beverage, and he was more frustrated than anything and said, I don't want it, just get out of the way.
Oh, they're moving up now to find our solo leader, Thomas De Hent, a 25-year-old Belgian from Vacansoleil, who has attacked. 5-man breakaway completely blown apart. Nobody is together anymore within the group. And that is our leader on the stage right now.
If he could pull this off, it would be something truly special. I still don't see it happening, but it would be a hat trick of sorts after his stage win from the break earlier this year, stage 7 of Paris-Nice, and then stage 20 of the Giro d'Italia, which, by the way, he finished 3rd overall in the process. But those days he had big gaps going into the later part of the race. Right now, he has a very small advantage.
The field still led by Saxo Bank. Gap was under a minute just a few moments ago. It still is 48 seconds. Even though De Hent has attacked at the front. Now, Philippe Gilbert is near the front of this group as well with his BMC teammates. He has that yellow helmet with the red and black kit of BMC. And Katusha moving back up right behind Saxo Bank now in the red and white for the race leader Rodriguez.
Well, Gilbert has to be thinking, if his legs are really good and things go just right, he just might have a shot at a stage win today. But the general classification battle is going to be so hot that I just don't see anybody other than a Rodriguez, a Contador, or a Valverde taking the win. I think it's got to be one of those 3 guys at the finish line.
All right, there is the summit of the climb. Thomas De Hent will be the first man under the banner. So 16.5K left to go the end of the stage for our race leader, Thomas de Gent, has one intermediate sprint and a final climb leading up to a summit finish also still up the road.
Lescant now being sucked up by the Saxo Bank Tinkoff-led peloton.
It was a 5-man breakaway for most of the day. It's completely fractured. 2 riders have been scooped up, now make it 3 from the field, and now 4. So, didn't take long for the remnants of the breakaway to be gobbled up by the field with a hard-charging Saxo Bank team under the banner, top of the climb, 50 seconds behind our lone leader, Thomas de Gent, the only one remaining out front here on stage number 6. Kilometers remaining in the stage, 42 seconds from the field to our lone leader, Thomas de Gent, and they are flying on the descent of the Category 3 climb. Saxo Bank leading the peloton. They will have an intermediate sprint with 5K to go. The final climb starts at 3.8K remaining. So the second of the 2 climbs much shorter than the first, but it's also steeper. And that's what's facing our leader here, Thomas de Gent, the only man left out on the road from what was a 5-man breakaway earlier.
He's got to take every risk on this descent here because every speed he can preserve will help him toward a position, but it's going to be such a tall order for one guy to stay behind him.
That second climb, much shorter than the first. However, it is somewhat tricky because there's 13 switchbacks from the 2K to go mark into the finish. It hits its steepest point, a 14% maximum slope between 3K and 1K to go. The final K itself is at 10%, and the climb overall averages 5.5. So that's what's still to come as the field is coming apart just a little bit, but that's natural on a descent when they're single file like this at such a high rate of speed. With 12.5K left to go for de Gent.
Yeah, you give yourself just that little bit of view in front of you, but you can see all the Saxo Bank guys here at the front, and one of those 4 is almost certainly Alberto Contador. His team whipped into a frenzy on the final 1.5 kilometers or so up to that Category 3 summit. And they are definitely continuing in that pace.
Now, remember what happened on the first summit finish, back on stage 3. On that last climb, Contador attacked 7 different times, and each time it was Valverde and Rodriguez who were able to stay with him. Froome lost a few seconds with each surge, but eventually always pulled himself back to Contador. But it was certainly Alberto who was the aggressor, who relentlessly attacked on that last climb. So we'll see if the same sort of narrative plays out here today as well.
And that's a very good observation, and I think the big difference is that today there's no downhill for the final mile to the finish line like there was on stage number 3. So that gave guys a chance to regroup, catch back on. This being a pure summit finish, we're going to see a little bit greater fireworks between the general classification men, and I think Froome, he's going to be really pushed, and he could lose some valuable seconds at the finish line.
Yeah, there's no time to recover if he falls off the pace like he did the other day, because it's steep up to the finish.
You can see just how tricky this descent is, as we were mentioning that the climb was pretty straightforward, but the descent, it's rough and it's got some sharp corners. You put those 2 things together, it's a lot tougher than if it's a smooth road because you're bouncing around in these corners.
Now, something else to pay attention to, given the fact that de Gent is now out front by himself, and the teams of our top GC riders are leading the field right now. We have that intermediate sprint coming up before the final climb, and there are 3 places of time bonuses, 6, 4, and 2 seconds for the first 3 across. So de Gent right now is in position to get the 6 seconds, but we still have the 4 and the 2 for the next 2 riders across that particular point. So we may see a Contador, Rodriguez, Valverde jump out and try to snag a couple of seconds.
Every second counts. We certainly know how tight these races can be at the end, and you pick up a second here, a few seconds there, and it adds up.
Now this final portion of Stage 6 presented commercial-free by Got Chocolate Milk. Saxo Bank still at the front of this field. Coming off the descent of the Category 3 climb, headed to another. In the distance, near the border with France in the Pyrenees of northern Spain today. Jaca is the town, former medieval capital of Aragon, back in the 1100s. And on another day of over 100-degree temperatures, over 4 hours on the bike, they are still rolling along. Under 10K to go to the finish.
This thing is just incredibly aggressive at the front, and you just have to think that Contador really wants to get a win. He tried so hard on stage number 3 with all those attacks, not able to pull it off. Ended up getting 4th and missing out on the time bonuses as well. 12, 8, and 4 seconds for the top 3 guys at the finish. De Hent here, moments ago, we saw he was down to just 20 seconds advantage. So he is losing that lead as he still has the final climb to go, and he's going to need a big buffer to make it up that final climb in front of the peloton. Everything is in play today. Not big time gaps expected, at least not by me, but it's going to be very interesting. All those switchbacks to really mess with guys' momentum. Positioning will be key. That's a big part of the reason that Saxo Bank is putting so much into the effort right now on the front.
And this is De Hent. He's been out there for a long time. He's part of that 5-man breakaway, the signature move on the day that went clear relatively early in the stage. He's the only man that has survived.
That's just about to come to an end here. Can't have much left in his legs to make it up these hills in front of the charging peloton. 7 kilometers to go for him.
2K away from the intermediate sprint. Alberto Contador, second wheel at the front of the peloton. Teammate in front and behind. Now it's 15 seconds from this peloton to De Hent. So they are just about onto the back of our race leader.
Contador did not have a lot of teammates left there. He had Navarro right behind him, one more teammate in front of him, and that was it for the Saxo Bank guys still at the front.
And I tell you what, they may get De Hent before that intermediate sprint, which would open up all 3 of the time bonus placings.
6, 4, and 2 seconds.
Right now, Contador second from the front of that peloton as well, so this could be interesting even before the climb. This is our leader, Thomas De Hent, hanging on by just a few seconds now. Coming up on the 6K to go banner on stage 6 at the Vuelta a Espana. And here comes the field behind him. 15 seconds back at the last kilometer checkpoint, 7K to go, and now they hit the 6K to go banner. They've taken off 2 more seconds. So the intermediate sprint point coming up with 5K left to go. De Hent still out front. We'll see what kind of battle there is for the other time bonuses behind him here at the front of the field. 6, 4, and 2 seconds for the first 3 at that intermediate sprint.
Well, in this general classification battle, notice how it's changing on the front. Contador's Saxo Bank team is no longer at the front. They've been swarmed by Movistar for Valverde as well as the Sky team for Froome. So he has used up a lot of his team's horsepower, and now he's going to have fewer guys here for at the finish line.
Froome is near the front. He's third wheel at the moment.
They just keeping everything strung out. Fletcher right behind him.
Now Thomas De Hent should be close to that sprint point here. And this is the Belgian in the middle of the town of Jaca.
Never feels good when you've been off the front all day long. He's been off for about 100 miles, and then having to get on these bricks and cobbles does not help the legs.
All right, so he has gone through the intermediate sprint point. There's a banner just before the one he went under right there that is actually where the time is taken on the intermediate sprint. He's inside a 5K to the finish, and the climb will come up shortly. Now, there's still 2 time bonus spots available here for the next 2 across the intermediate sprint. Chris Froome is sitting in 3rd position at the front of this peloton.
Look at Valverde in the white jersey, about 5-6 wheels back. It looks like Froome is thinking about going for it, and I have a feeling Valverde is also.
Froome 1 second back of the race lead.
Okay, now Fletcher coming. Oh, he didn't come around Lostras. It looked like he was going to dive inside Lostras there.
Oh, they're just 7 seconds behind Thomas de Hent now. So judging by that, they must have already gone through the intermediate sprint. And they just didn't show it. So when we get the information, we'll pass it along as to how they came through that intermediate sprint with 5K to go. But they're just about to catch our leader, Thomas de Hent, here as the climb is going to start up to the summit finish. So this is the field, picking up Thomas de Hent, and now the entire breakaway has been brought back on stage number 6. This is the front of the race, starting on the final climb, leading up to the 3rd summit finish in this first week of the Vuelta. Movistar leading the way, Sky right behind, and Katusha.
Fairly straight section of road here as they're starting the lower slopes of this final climb, but in the final 2 kilometers, they do have the 13 hairpins and up to a 14% grade to sort it out, and it's going to sort out in a big way.
Going to really get steep with 3K to go. Going to hit the maximum of 14%. Chris Froome sitting in 2nd, Valverde 3rd, Contador 4th at the front end of this group.
No, they're not bluffing at all. Nobody's holding their cards very close to their chest. All the GC men at the front ready to lock and load against each other on the switchbacks that they're about to hit.
So Froome, Valverde, Contador, Rodriguez in that order. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th right now. On the lower slopes, but the steepest part of this climb. Benyat Chosti is the rider out front for Movistar, setting the tempo. Froome of Sky right behind him. And Chosti, a pretty good climber. And these are the switchbacks, 13 altogether within a 2-kilometer stretch on this climb.
Going to be a lot of guys off the back at this infernal pace that's going on. And in addition to that, it's 100 degrees.
He just went over one Category 3 climb through an intermediate sprint. Now on this 3.8K Cat 3 climb to take them up to the summit finish. And Chosti still leading the way, followed by Froome, Valverde, Contador, and Rodriguez. Nobody's made a move as of yet.
Chosti's not going to be able to keep this up forever, and we're going to see some attacks. Also right to the right there of Rodriguez in the red jersey, that is Rigoberto Urán. He's a big helper for Froome.
Sergio Henao is also up there for Team Sky. And things thinning out behind them. Now what we're not seeing is the riders 4th and 5th on the GC. Bok Mollema and Robert Hayes-Sink of Rabobank.
Still a pretty large group, but I'm not picking out any of the orange jerseys of Rabobank in it, Steve. And now it's Sergio Henao who's come to the front. One of the Colombians on that Sky team, and he's a very important man for these mountain finishes.
And now Urán and then Chris Froome at the front, so he still has two teammates, does Chris Froome. Joaquin Rodriguez is right behind him. This is Igor Anton of Euskaltel, number 71.
And he has been popped.
Another disappointing performance in his home Grand Tour. And back to the front we go. Chris Froome with two teammates, Eynau and Aran, just ahead of him. Froome is third wheel. Then it's the red jersey of overall leader Joaquin Rodriguez and Contador behind him.
Strength in numbers for Sky. When you got a couple of good, solid climbers like that, it's very good.
4.5 hours in. Nicholas Roach is also up there for AG2R.
Roach has proven he's been very good on these types of finishes in this race so far. And Froome and Rigoberto Urán talking it out.
That's Buck Mollema, number 166. Buck Mollema starting the day fourth on the GC, just 9 seconds back.
He's saying goodbye to that right now.
His teammate Robert Haysink also 9 seconds back, and haven't seen him either.
Well, if anybody ever wonders why cycling is called a team sport, just look at what Eynau is doing right now. Keeping his leader up there out of the wind, but still in a place where he can respond to any attacks from his competitors.
This is what Team Sky did at the Tour de France for Bradley Wiggins. They're now doing it a month later at the Vuelta for Chris Froome, who's 1 second behind Joaquin Rodriguez on the GC, and Rodriguez is right behind Froome at the front of this group now, with Contador behind the leader Rodriguez, and then Valverde sitting right behind Contador. Remember, Joaquin Rodriguez, who's fourth from the front at the bottom of the screen in red, said that he's targeting the win today. Looked at the stage and said, I want to win.
Robert Haysink
won't win.
That's a tough day for him as well. We've been looking for him. He is also out the back. Came into the day 9 seconds down, sitting in fifth.
So the top five could look different by the end of the stage.
It sure could, and it could even look different at the very top. This one is so close between our top three guys in the overall, just 5 seconds separating Rodriguez, Froome, and Contador. We could see a lot of changes.
Defending Vuelta champion J.J. Cobo once again losing time on a climb, as he has throughout this first week. No big accelerations from our top GC riders, mostly because Sky is setting such a hard tempo at the front.
Moments like this, you don't necessarily want to be the first guy to attack, because that's often the one that doesn't stick. But if nobody does attack, somebody's got to go first, obviously.
Final K will be at 10%. 3 time bonuses at the finish line, 12, 8, and 4 seconds for the first 3 across the line. Cobo off the back, but his teammate Alejandro Valverde in the white jersey is still in the front group.
Cobo so close to the back of this, just not quite on it.
Still the same order. Chris Froome sitting in third position behind Eynau and Urán. Behind Froome, it's the red jersey of leader Joaquin Rodriguez, then Contador.
Okay, now Urán taking over. Notice how he keeps looking back. He's accelerating, but he's making sure he's not hurting his team leader, Chris Froome.
They stretch out once again with 500 meters now left to go.
Amazing. No real attacks yet with only 500 to go.
It's going to come down to time bonuses at the finish here. Now Froome takes over the lead, followed by Rodriguez and Contador.
Oh, this is really early for Froome to go. This is going to put him into trouble. Rodriguez on the wheel, but look at this. Contador is dropped.
Contador and Valverde are dropped. Froome just ahead of Rodriguez inside the final 300 meters. Oh, what a surprise!
This is huge because Rodriguez is going to be able to get this win almost for sure, but Contador is gone.
Rodriguez goes around Froome. The stage he said he wanted to win. He intended to win. He is pulling away to the win.
Nobody can match Perito on finishes like this.
Joaquin Rodriguez is going to extend it at the top of the jet. Chris Froome is going to come second, and then one more time bonus open for third.
And look at that, it's Valverde into third. Very surprising. Contador fourth. He got dropped, and he got dropped by a fair amount.
Wow. After 4.5 hours, what a huge surprise at the top of our third summit finish in this opening week.
17, 18 seconds from Rodriguez back to Contador. This race is definitely very interesting. Haysink coming in just over 30 seconds back. Man, that was a battle.
Other riders still within a minute of Joaquim Rodriguez, who wins his first stage of this year's Vuelta after winning 2 stages last year. And he's going to get a little breathing room at the top of the GC. Not a lot, but certainly more than he had when he came into the stage, leading Chris Froome by just 1 second. So Joaquim Rodriguez, overall leader, gets his first win of this year's Vuelta, taking the summit finish on stage number 6. At this type of an uphill finish, then Joaquim Rodriguez, our Vuelta race leader.
Easily coming around Chris Froome, who really, to me, was the big surprise of the day, that he got rid of Contador and Valverde, 2 men who typically are much better, but Rodriguez, look at him go to the stage win, padding his overall lead. He only had 1 second coming into today. He's going to look a lot better now. Rodriguez easily getting his first stage win after being very upset, getting pipped by about 5 millimeters. Stage number 3 to Alejandro Valverde. There's no question today, several seconds in the bank at the finish line as he wins stage number 6.
Joaquim Rodriguez, 2 Vuelta stage wins a year ago, 2 Giro stage wins this year, and now his first Vuelta stage victory. 33-year-old Joaquim Rodriguez pulling away to the stage win on our 6th day here at the Vuelta. Still in search of his first ever Grand Tour title. He's racking up the Grand Tour stage wins and making himself a little more comfortable in the race lead now as a result of his time bonus today.
Great job by him. Man, that guy can deliver on an uphill finish like nobody else. But really, it was surprising not to see him challenged by Alberto Contador on the finish. That's a type of finish that suits him pretty well as well, typically.
Second overall in last year's Vuelta. Wore the red jersey for just 1 day last year. This is going to be his 3rd day coming up tomorrow. Now he followed Chris Froome and the Team Sky Riders up the final climb before launching his acceleration that gets him the time bonus of 12 seconds and moves him ahead of Chris Froome now by 10 seconds. He's 35 clear of Contador, with Iran, Haysink, and Valverde still within 1 minute of our race leader.